With a final, desperate thrust, a young warrior drives his glowing sword through a colossal, skull-helmed beast. Nearby, the grievously wounded Demon King looks on in disbelief, unable to comprehend his defeat at the hands of a complete unknown. He stands over another fallen figure, who weakly asks for his name. The warrior, his green cloak still crackling with power, introduces himself as Clayers. He claims to be nothing more than a villager, someone who simply carried luggage for the hero's party. With a final, ground-shaking thud, the massive beast collapses, its reign of terror ended. Clay stands alone amidst the wreckage, the silent victor. From his prone position, the dying Demon King begins to chuckle. He finds the situation absurdly amusing, to think his end would come not from a holy knight, but from a mere villager. He looks up at the young warrior, a bloody grin spreading across his face, and asks if he has anything more to say. Clay, his expression cold and splattered with grime, retorts, asking if the Demon King is the one with last words. Understanding the finality of the moment, Clay raises his sword. A single, swift motion brings the blade down, silencing the Demon King for good. Nearby, a young man with blonde hair watches in horror as his companion collapses. The blonde man slowly takes in a scene of utter destruction, his eyes landing on the massive foot of the fallen beast. He then looks toward Clay, standing amidst the carnage, and mutters in disbelief. He calls out to Clay, asking if he truly defeated the Demon King. Clay turns, a smile of relief spreading across his face as he exclaims Yuka's name, glad he's awake. As he relaxes, however, the sword in his hand begins to crackle and fracture. Yuka's eyes widen, his shock directed at the weapon. He cries out that it's his holy sword, Aaron's Veil. Looking down at the disintegrating blade, Clay apologizes, explaining that his own sword broke, so he borrowed Yuka's without asking. The explanation leaves Yuka utterly stunned. He declares that it should be impossible for anyone to even touch the holy sword, unless they are the Altonia royal family. A startling thought crosses his mind. Could this luggage carrier be a hidden child of the royal line, or even his own brother? He attempted to return the holy sword, but as Clay reached for it, the blade flared with divine energy, searing his hand. Clay cried out in pain, pulling back his scorched fingers as Yuka looked on in surprise. Staring at the still glowing sword, Yuka murmured its name, Aaron's Veil. He concluded that its violent reaction must be a special measure against the remnants of the Demon King's army, confirming the weapon's unique purpose. Clay, meanwhile, could only tend to his throbbing hand, realizing the truth in Yuka's words. His own pain momentarily forgotten, Clay's expression hardened. He reflected on their progress. 3 of the 4 heavenly kings, the Demon King's top executives, had already been vanquished. Yuka's gaze was distant as he continued the thought. The greatest threat among the Demon King's forces, he explained, was the Demon King's own skill. With him gone, the army was likely finished for good. That unique skill was known as Ruler of Demons, a power that allowed the Demon King to strengthen and control a vast legion of demonic creatures and monsters. Now, standing amidst the ruins of the Demon King's fortress, the weight of that reality settled in. Yuka declared that with the ruler of demons gone and no one to succeed him, their victory was absolute. Clay listened in silence, his expression unreadable as he gazed out over the desolate landscape. His companion, however, broke the solemn mood with a cheerful stretch. Yuka remarked that now that their journey to subjugate the Demon King was over, the ending felt somewhat anticlimactic. Clay shot back, reminding him that he'd had an incredibly difficult time, to the point of nearly dying. Yuka simply smiled, conceding the point. That's true, he said, before reminding Clay that he was, after all, the one who had defeated the Demon King. The direct praise left Clay flustered. His smile softened as a memory surfaced. He recalled advocating for Clay to join the royal party, despite the doubts of his advisors. One woman had questioned bringing a mere villager on such a journey, and Yuka admitted that even he had his reservations. Back in the present, he looked down at Clay, who had knelt before him. He looked at his companion and stated that, as expected, the prophecy was correct. Yuka declared that Clayers was the true hero. Clay, his face dirty and worn, could only stammer in disbelief, questioning how it could possibly be someone like him. Ignoring his friend's shock, Yuka cheerfully suggested that upon their return to the country, Clay would be hailed as a hero and should start thinking about the content of his speech. He added that they first needed to wake up Laura and Teritas. Flustered, Clay shouted back that he wasn't giving any speech. A few days after the Demon King's subjugation, the party arrived at a grand castle. From a high balcony, Zelgodo, king of the Altonia kingdom, announced the arrival of his son, Yuka, and his companions, praising their grand and noble cause. Observing from aside, Prime Minister G. Conrad smirked, expressing his disbelief that they had actually managed to defeat the Demon King. Within the throne room, King Zelgodo declared to the assembled crowd that fitting rewards must be bestowed upon everyone in the hero's party. Before him, the 4 companions knelt in reverence. As they knelt, G. Conrad leaned towards Clay, whispering that Lady Flora and Lord Teritas must have been very active. He insinuated that if the first prince, Yuka, were credited with the victory, the line of succession would be in danger. Clay's eyes widened in alarm. The Prime Minister's internal thoughts revealed his plot. He considered it no problem, reasoning that since no one truly defeated the Demon King, the achievement simply needed to be attributed to someone other than Yuka. He could just swap it for the achievements of his companions. Elsewhere, Teritas admitted with a smile that he couldn't do anything, as he was knocked unconscious almost immediately. Flora agreed, stating that unfortunately, she was unable to be of any help at all in the battle against the Demon King. A knight in a white uniform knelt before the throne to deliver the official report. He began to announce the one who struck down the Demon King, a threat to all humanity. The king and prime minister listened, but their expressions quickly twisted from anticipation to utter disbelief. The knight's voice rang out, declaring that it was Lord Yuka. The announcement sent a wave of shock through the entire court. Clay stared, completely bewildered, as the king, Jeeg, Flora, and Teritas all reacted with stunned, disbelieving faces. He listened in disbelief as the knight continued his testimony. The man claimed he was terrified and hiding, but he certainly saw Lord Yuka destroy the Demon King. As proof, he pointed to the demon's corpse, adding that an examination would confirm it was slain by the holy sword Aaron's veil, a weapon only those with royal blood can wield. Prince Yuka himself looked utterly bewildered by the account. This blatant falsehood caused Eintes Flora to erupt in fury. "What was that just now?" she shouted at the knight, demanding to know why he would tell such a lie when Yuka was the one who defeated the Demon King. She warned him that he couldn't take it back now, as it would go against his majesty's word. Yuka quickly intervened, urging her to calm down and suggesting there must be a reason for it. As she fumed, Yuka turned to Clay with a strained laugh, telling him it was shameful to try and pin his own achievements on him. He admitted that the lie was bad and had made him worry, but he repeated that there must be a reason. Clay remained silent, his expression unreadable. His silence finally broke. Clay stated that, considering Duke Conrad's actions, he believed it was better for the achievement of defeating the Demon King to be attributed to Yuka. Both Yuka and Flora reacted with surprise, the prince questioning the mention of the Duke's name. From a nearby seat, Sage Teritas interjected with a knowing smile. He asked Clay what he meant, though it was clear he already understood. Teritas correctly deduced that Yuka wasn't the true hero and that Clay had orchestrated this lie because he feared the truth would put the prince's position in danger. He then began to explain the political situation. The true power in the kingdom, he clarified, was Duke Conrad, with Clay being merely at his beck and call. Currently, the first in line for succession was Yuka's elder brother, His Highness Alton. Continuing his analysis, Teritas pointed out that with this great achievement now attached to his name, Yuka's chances of ascending the throne had increased dramatically, a development that would certainly not be amusing for Duke Conrad. He concluded his point directly, explaining to a shocked Yuka that if the report had honestly named Clay as the victor, the Duke would have been overjoyed. It would have been the perfect opportunity to disparage the prince and lower his standing in the court. Clay then revealed his own motivations. He knew that if he took the credit, Duke Conrad would simply use the achievement for his own gain, letting it rot. However, in Yuka's hands, it becomes a powerful tool, a weapon to help him ascend the throne. With a gentle smile, Clay confessed his belief that if Yuka were to become king, he could create a country where everyone could live in peace. Hearing his noble intentions, Flora's anger vanished. She declared that she understood and would say no more. Turning to Yuka, she acknowledged that he had been forcing himself to act for Clay's sake, and she pledged her full support. Yuka accepted, promising to do his best. He then looked at Clay, asking what he would do from now on. He began to explain that there was, in fact, something he had wanted to try for some time. Regarding his future, he declared his intention to pioneer the Borderlands, a demonic land said to be the most dangerous in the world. The declaration stunned his companions. Teritas, his eyes wide with disbelief, echoed the word in a shout. Borderlands? He pressed Clay, confirming he understood the gravity of his choice, that the Borderlands are a frontier overrun by powerful demons. Teritas then recounted an old law. Anyone who successfully pioneers that territory by their own effort is granted ownership of the land. It was a standing offer, he explained, because the kingdom had long since abandoned the dangerously undeveloped region. He gestured towards a map of the Albania kingdom, emphasizing that despite the law's existence, no one had ever succeeded in the endeavor. From across the room, Clay calmly confirmed that the old rule was, in fact, still valid. With a smile, Clay downplayed the idea, saying it wasn't a grand plan. He explained his thought process. Famous individuals struggled to find peace within the kingdom, and he wished to create a place where everyone could relax. Flora realized his true aim was to secure his own territory. He added that his unique abilities were particularly well-suited for a challenging place like the Borderlands. Inside the castle, Clay's companions discuss his departure. Flora, with a resigned expression, states that if he wants to go, she won't stop him. Yuka offers his support, promising to help even if Clay travels to the Borderlands. Teritas looks downcast, admitting that it will be lonely without him. He is visibly moved by their concern. As he thinks of them, Teritas places a reassuring hand on his shoulder, patting it twice. Their quiet moment is shattered as officials burst into the room. Lord Yuka is summoned to handle arrangements with neighboring countries. Lady Flora is needed for a pilgrimage ritual, and Lord Teritas is called to discuss a Magic Academy recommendation. The three heroes are suddenly overwhelmed by their new responsibilities. Watching them get pulled away, Clay remarks to himself how tough it is to be a hero. As they are led off, Flora sighs about the troublesome talk, and Yuka accepts that everyone will be busy from now on. With his friends occupied, Clay turns and departs from the castle alone, glancing back one last time before walking through a vast, empty courtyard. He walks on, reflecting that he is just a villager whose journey has ended. He wonders if he should have said a proper goodbye, but dismisses the thought, figuring they're all too busy with their new roles. The thought of how long it might be until he sees them again weighs on him. His mind fills with memories of their recent adventures, laughing together, resting by a campfire, training side by side. He feels a pang of loneliness, realizing how distant that time already feels, though it was only just recently they were always together. He stops in a field, looking away with a somber expression, completely unaware that Flora, Yuka, and Teritas are standing just a short distance behind him, watching. Teritas notices his friend's melancholy. Clay suddenly hears them and spins around, shocked. He stammers, asking why they are here. Teritas smiles, stating that of course they came to see him off. Before he can react further, Flora and Teritas rush forward, pulling him into a tight, emotional embrace. Yuka watches the reunion, a look of stunned surprise on his face as his friends cling to a tearful Clay. He returned the embrace, a bittersweet smile on his face as he thanked his friends. He wished for them all to stay safe and well. His friends watched him go, their expressions a mixture of sadness for his departure and quiet understanding. With the farewells exchanged, he turned and began his solitary journey, walking away from the capital as the others waved from the road behind him. His journey took him through rugged mountain passes and deep into the woods, where he traveled by day and made camp by night. As he walked, he calculated his position, realizing he was still about 2 days from the borderlands. The thought had barely crossed his mind when a sudden scream pierced the quiet of the forest, causing him to whirl around in alarm. He pinpointed the source of the commotion just off the path. A covered wagon was beset by a pack of monstrous wolves, with a lone young man standing guard before the terrified horses. Without hesitation, he charged toward the scene, recognizing the beasts as forest wolves. As he ran, he began to gather magical wind energy in his palm, drawing the attention of the beleaguered driver. He unleashed the spell with a shout, sending a barrage of sharp, invisible blades of wind tearing through the pack of wolves. The attack was over in an instant, the beasts falling where they stood. The driver stared in stunned silence as Clay landed softly and turned to him, asking if he was all right. With the danger past and the travelers safe, the wagon's wheels began to turn once more, continuing its journey down the forest path. The horse-drawn wagon rumbles along a country road. The young driver expresses his profound thanks for the earlier rescue, but Clay insists that he is the grateful one for being allowed to ride along. The man introduces himself as Glans, a merchant from Emeru village. He then presents his daughter, Rita, who offers her own polite thanks for Clay's help. As they travel, Glans explains they were on their way back from the capital after stocking up. He asks Clay why he is in such a remote area. Clay confirms he knows of Emeru village, recognizing it as the settlement closest to the borderlands. He explains that he has business in the borderlands and asks if Glans could tell him about the region. The merchant and his daughter both react with surprise at his destination. The merchant smiles, suggesting that rather than explaining, it would be much quicker for Clay to see it for himself, leaving the young warrior looking puzzled. Meanwhile, in a far more opulent setting, a man with long, tied-back hair addresses Prince Yuka, who calmly sips from a teacup, seemingly unbothered by the visitor's arrival. He lowers the cup, acknowledging that it is rare for this particular guest to visit him. With a placid smile, he asks if the man needs something. The visitor, Duke Conrad, steps forward. He claims he has come to offer his sincere congratulations for the subjugation of the Demon King, remarking how proud His Highness must be. He praises Yuka as the hero of salvation, but his tone shifts as he admits there's one thing that concerns him. His jovial expression vanishes, replaced by a sharp, focused gaze as he prepares to voice this concern directly to the prince. He poses a direct and startling question. Did Yuka truly defeat the Demon King? The prince's calm facade cracks into a tense smile as he asks why the Duke would dare to ask such a thing. He asks for the conclusion of the appraisal, stating that the wounds on the Demon King's corpse were from his holy sword. Duke Conrad affirms this, agreeing that the corpse was indeed butchered by His Majesty's hand. The Duke's expression, however, shifts to a confident smirk. He questions if the body was truly that of the Demon King, adding that this is all he wishes to say on the matter. He turns his back, elaborating on his doubt by stating that no one has ever seen the Demon King's face. He suggests that perhaps the prince simply killed a random traveler and is passing the corpse off as his great foe. Facing the prince again, the Duke adopts a patronizing tone. He claims not to doubt His Highness's achievements, but insists it would be wise to provide proof that he truly possesses the power to defeat the Demon King. The prince bristles at the demand, asking how he could possibly prove it and questioning if he's expected to produce another Demon King. Duke Conrad calmly proposes a mock battle against 3 S-rank adventurers. He enthusiastically suggests making it a grand event for all the citizens to witness. Yuka considers this, recalling that S-rank adventurers are said to possess power great enough to surpass an entire army, meaning a victory against 3 should be simple for him. His internal thoughts, however, reveal the truth. He knows a shameful defeat would ruin his standing, and frustratingly admits to himself that Conrad's deduction is correct. He does not have the power to defeat the Demon King. The Duke, sensing his hesitation, says it's fine with him, but the prince's resolve hardens. He declares that he inherited the seat of a hero from a friend and will not be swayed by such a boring tactic. He firmly accepts the proposal. Far away, the journey ends. Glands announces their arrival, telling Clay to see for himself. Clay's eyes widen in disbelief and shock at the sight before them. He stares at a colossal, twisted mass of blackened, thorny vines and roots, a structure pulsating with a dark, corrupting energy. He can only stammer, unable to process what he is seeing. He had traveled by wagon, journeying along a simple dirt path that cut through an open field, bringing him to the edge of the unknown. The journey ended abruptly at the edge of a dark, twisted forest. A bead of sweat traced its way down his temple as he took in the sight, a single, disbelieving thought echoing in his mind: the borderlands. His initial shock gave way to a grim smile. The task was clear: pioneering these corrupted lands. A thrill of anticipation cut through the unease as he realized this was going to get interesting. Unseen by him, a small, dark figure stood silently at the base of one of the gnarled trees. Clay arrives with his companions, observing the rustic buildings. He identifies their location as Emiru Village, noting its proximity to the borderlands. Noticing the setting sun, Glands suggests that Clay wait until the next day to travel to the borderlands. He then asks if there's a place in the village where Clay could stay for about a month, but Clay seems to think there isn't one. In response to his predicament, Rita brightly offers her own home for him to stay in. Clay is taken aback, expressing hesitation about staying with a girl his age, but she quickly insists that he shouldn't worry about it. He turns to Glands for confirmation, questioning if he is truly all right with the arrangement. Glands reassures him that it's a way to repay him for saving them from the monsters. Flustered, Clay is left speechless as Rita looks on with hopeful anticipation. Under the twilight sky, he finally relents. He agrees to their offer, but clarifies it will only be until he can build a place of his own. The next morning, Clay awakens in a simple bed, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. Having changed out of his travel cloak, he descends the stairs where Rita, already busy in the kitchen, turns at the sound of his approach. She wishes him a good morning and presents a bountiful breakfast, explaining it's another part of her thanks. Clay is impressed by the spread. He tries one of the potatoes and is amazed by its fluffy texture and taste, which Rita attributes to them being freshly harvested. While eating, he confidently states that since she saw him in action, she must be aware of his skills. A brief image of him unleashing a powerful spell flashes through his mind. He acknowledges that his display was impressive, but Glands adds that it was a kind of powerful magic he has never seen before. He is asked by Glands if he possesses some amazing skill seeds. With a slight smile, he simply denies it. He explains to the surprised pair that the only skill seeds he has are appraisal and mimicry. Glands reacts with surprise. Rita recalls that skill seeds are the seeds of talent granted by the gods at birth, which are then identified at a church. Clay confirms her understanding is correct. He elaborates, explaining that skill seeds act as a guide, indicating a path where one can truly thrive. A swordsman seed suggests a talent with the sword, while a mage seed points to a gift for magic, though he stresses that training is still essential for any talent to blossom. Glands considers this, noting that a combat-focused seed naturally points to the potential of a powerful warrior. However, he points out that in Clay's case, both appraisal and mimicry are quite common. With a slight smile, he agrees, admitting that while having two seeds is rare, it doesn't offer much hope for greatness. He describes his abilities as merely being slightly better at appraising objects and a bit quicker at imitation. Her eyes widen as she processes this. She exclaims that his strength without a combat talent is what makes him even more amazing. The praise causes Clay to recall a past moment, a memory of standing before Sage Taritas and lamenting that with his skill seeds, he could never be of help to anyone. In that memory, Sage Taritas offered him profound advice, stating that life isn't determined by a skill seed. Instead, it is shaped by the people one meets along the way. The recollection brings a soft, thoughtful smile to his face. As he reflects, Rita continues her own line of reasoning. She explains that in reality, most people's lives and jobs have nothing to do with their skill seeds. She believes the seeds only reveal potential, and that how a life turns out depends entirely on the individual. The sentiment lingered in the air. Even with a common skill seed, one could carve their own path through effort and creativity. With their conversation concluded, Taritas turned to leave, offering a simple "all right" as he departed. Clay watched him go for a moment before declaring his own intention. It was time to head out and scout the borderlands. As he began to walk away, his path was suddenly blocked by an aggressive young man from the village who shouted, "Hey, outsider!" Clay, standing nearby, turned in confusion. The young man ignored Taritas and turned his aggression toward Clay. He declared that he didn't know what tricks Clay had used, but even if Glands and the others had accepted him, the rest of the village, especially him, would not. He finished by yelling that there was no place for outsiders and that Clay should just get out. He listened to the outburst, his own expression remaining neutral and thoughtful. The villagers stormed off, shouting one last warning. Watching him go, Clay quietly acknowledged the depth of the animosity, thinking to himself that the man truly hated him. He understood their suspicion. No one had ever tried to move so close to the borderlands before, so their reaction was only natural. Since he planned to live there, making them neighbors, he resolved that he would simply have to do his best to slowly close the distance between them. With that resolve, he turned and walked away from the village, venturing into the nearby forest. He walked deeper among the trees, recalling Glands' words that the herbs gathered here were a source of income for the village. The area seemed peaceful. He couldn't sense any monsters. It appeared to be just an ordinary forest. And then his thoughts were cut short as he came to a sudden, grinding halt. He surveyed the desolate landscape, noting how the plants around the border were withered and dead. The cause, he realized, was an overwhelming density of ambient mana. The concentration was so high, he mused, that anyone with low mana reserves could perish simply by setting foot in the area. Resolved to gauge its true strength, he took a firm step forward, crossing the threshold into the mana-saturated territory. The moment he entered, an immense, oppressive force washed over him, the sheer weight of the mana pressing in from all sides. As he pushed deeper, he felt the very air shift around him. This was no simple walk in the park, he thought grimly. Suddenly, a sharp creak from a nearby tree snagged his attention. His gaze sharpened instantly. Focusing his senses, he activated his appraisal skill to identify the unseen presence. The skill revealed its target, a goblin. More than one, in fact. The appraisal provided further details. A B+ combat rating, low intelligence, and a notable trait for being highly fertile. He had thought to find low-tier monsters in the Borderlands, but these goblins were clearly on another level compared to their common counterparts. Deciding they would make for a good warm-up, he drew his sword. The moment the blade was unsheathed, the entire goblin troop turned towards him. He was taken aback. They detected him even though he was actively suppressing his presence. With a unified, piercing shriek, the creatures lunged. They were unervingly fast, closing the distance in an instant. But their speed was not enough. In a blur of steel, he cut them all down in a single decisive strike. Even with their enhanced strength, he concluded, a goblin is still just a goblin. He stands amidst the fallen goblins, a solitary figure in the unnaturally blanched forest, the air thick with a palpable energy. He considers the creature's corpse, noting that while it appeared to be a regular goblin, it moved with exceptional speed. He concludes this must be a unique trait of the monsters in the Borderlands. His eyes widen in realization as he looks upon the strange, pulsating flora. The dense mana unique to this region, he understands, is what's enhancing the monster's power. To confirm this, he extracts a magic stone from a fallen goblin and is stunned. The stone is enormous, far larger than anything a creature of this type should possess. Holding the stone, he acknowledges that developing this area will be tough without a way to manage the mana. Nevertheless, his resolve hardens. He decides to keep exploring for a while longer. His continued exploration pits him against a variety of other mana-enhanced beasts, from monstrous flora to strange, sack-like creatures and small, aggressive drakes, all of which he dispatches. Meanwhile, back in a nearby town, a young woman named Rita is startled by the clack of a door opening. She turns to see Clay, welcoming him back with a smile. Rita remarks on how quick his trip was, questioning if he had really gone to the Borderlands. He confirms that he did. Her surprise grows as she notes it's only just past noon. Clay simply states that it's a fascinating place, just as he had thought. He then tells her he is serious and has gathered a large number of magic stones from his brief trip, offering them to her to use freely. Rita stares, wide-eyed and speechless at his generosity. He assumed she would at least have a storage vault, but Rita vehemently denies it, exclaiming that they could never afford such an expensive item. He acknowledges that while storage vaults are common in large cities, things are different out on the frontier. She appreciates the thought, but explains that the only magic tool they possess capable of using even scrap magic stones is a simple lantern. As she speaks, he falls silent, his gaze dropping to his own worn hand. His thoughts drift to the reality of their surroundings. Life on the frontier is indeed a constant struggle, filled with inconveniences that city dwellers never face. A smile of resolve spreads across his face. He owes Rita for her help, and with that thought, he announces that he has just found himself a new mission. Rita, taken aback, questions his sudden declaration of taking on a big job for someone else's sake. Inside a sparse room, a young man with dark, messy hair resolves to begin his work. With a determined smile, he declares his readiness and activates a storage spell. A cascade of materials, wood, crystals, and various components, tumbles out of a magical rift and onto his workbench. He picks up a pointed, pen-like tool and, with intense focus, begins to meticulously carve a design into a piece of wood, the tip making a soft, crunching sound as it etches the surface. As his hands work, his mind wanders. He reflects on his purpose for coming to this place, the untamed, demonic land at the kingdom's edge known as the Borderlands. He came to develop it, hoping to create a peaceful life where his friends might occasionally visit. He knows the land is dangerous, filled with a dense magical energy that has created its own ecosystem of magical forests. He acknowledges that while he wanted to build a house immediately, his priority must be research and experimentation to make the area safe. Until then, he must rely on the nearby village, and on Rita and the others who live there. This thought brings his focus back to his current project. That's precisely why he must finish this magic stove as soon as possible. He continues to carefully inscribe glowing runes onto one of the stove's circular components. A small, nostalgic smile touches his lips. He realizes that this is the first time someone has ever given him a role of his own, trusting him to create magical devices like this. The memory transports him back in time to when he left his village because he felt he didn't belong. It was then that he had joined the hero's party. He recalls his companions, the first Prince Yuka, Sage Teritas, and Eintes Flora. He had felt completely useless to them, possessing only mediocre skill seeds. Yet, despite his perceived inadequacy, not one of them ever treated him coldly. The memory intensifies in his sleep. He remembers how they protected him during monster attacks. More than that, they had even taken the time to teach him, an illiterate boy, how to read and write. The weight of this kindness causes him to groan and stir in his bed. Awakened by the vivid dream, he sits up in the dim light of a rustic, worn-down room, the bittersweet memories of his former companions still fresh in his mind. He was just stirring from sleep when a familiar voice called out. Yuka, the first prince, peeked through the tent flap, a gentle smile on his face as he asked if he was awake. Startled, he stammered a greeting. Yuka's smile widened as he cheerfully wished Clay a good morning. These were the moments he treasured. For someone who had always been alone, the simple act of waking up with others and sharing breakfast brought him more happiness than anything else. He didn't care about slaying the Demon King or grand quests. All he wanted was to repay the people who had changed his life, to be useful to them in any way he could. This desire to be useful was at the forefront of his mind during another encounter. The sage, Taritas, gestured toward a complex diagram, asking Clay if he had drawn it himself. He looked down at the intricate magic circle spread out on the parchment and quietly confirmed that he had. Taritas studied the drawing, his expression one of astonishment. He asked if something was wrong, but quickly clarified that it was just surprisingly well done, noting that even students at the Magic Academy would need a year of study to draw one so well. A wave of delight washed over Clay at the praise. He explained that he had simply kept copying them, and eventually, he became able to draw them with such precision. Taritas repeated the word copying, his mind beginning to work. A realization began to dawn on the sage. He recalled that Clay's skill seed was limitations, and that he also possessed the appraisal skill. He mused aloud that both of those skills were normally considered mediocre. However, he began to suspect there might be a synergy between them. Clay overheard, looking puzzled as he repeated the unfamiliar word. He explained that the synergistic effect of Kaido's skill seeds was likely due to the analysis information from appraisal, making his imitation skill far more accurate. The sage then posed a startling question, his eyes wide with the sheer possibility. What if Kaido could perfectly imitate any master's technique just by watching it? Kaido could only stammer in confusion. Taritas, however, was convinced this was the reason he was chosen by the prophecy. Grasping Kaido's shoulders, he declared that if his hypothesis was correct, the young man had the potential to surpass even the heroes. The weight of this revelation left him utterly stunned. Overwhelmed, he dropped to his knees, bowing before the sage. He pleaded to be told what he could do, vowing to do anything, whatever it took. From that point forward, his days were a whirlwind of activity, hectic but deeply fulfilling. Driven by the desire to repay them, he focused on imitating their skills. Taritas' magic, Yuka's swordsmanship, and Flora's divine arts. He recalled how they had happily taught him, allowing him to make the powers they'd earned over years of training his own. His only goal had been to be helpful. By copying and mastering all their techniques, he never imagined he would become the one to defeat the Demon King. Back in the present, Kaido placed his hand on his work, satisfied. With the task completed before dinner, he stretched and decided to step outside for some fresh air. Outside, he found Glands and shared a concern that had been nagging at him, asking what would happen if a monster from the borderlands reached the village. Glands confirmed his worry, stating that even a single one would pose a serious threat. He then explained that the monsters never travel that far. The reason was simple and absolute. If they leave the borderlands, they die. The statement left Kaido utterly shocked. He processed the startling information. Glands confirmed that, yes, the monsters simply die if they leave the borderlands. At the earliest, they last a week, at most a month before they drop dead on their own. This revelation left him reeling. He couldn't understand how they couldn't survive outside their territory, questioning what could possibly be different there compared to everywhere else. A single thought crystallized in his mind, the manhwa. Sometime later, he and Glands returned to the house, where Rita greeted them at the door with a bright smile and a cheerful welcome. She remarked that their timing was perfect, as she was about to start preparing dinner. Kaido seized the opportunity, announcing that he had just finished making a magic tool and offered to let them try it, much to Glands' surprise. Her cheerful expression shifted to one of pure confusion. He then revealed his creations, a gleaming two-burner magic stove and a tall storage unit. Both father and daughter stared, utterly stunned. Rita stammered that it was truly a magical device, and a sweating Glands could only agree. Overwhelmed, Rita immediately tried to refuse, insisting she couldn't possibly accept something so valuable. But Kaido waved off her concerns, explaining that he would be depending on them for a while and that they owed him for his help. He told her to consider it payment as he began to install the device. As she watched him, her expression softened. Kaido shared that this magic stove held a special significance. It was the very first magic tool his master had taught him to make. The memory of that lesson with Taritas became vivid. His master had told him that if he could just make this, he would be able to make a living while making people happy. Taritas' core belief was that enriching people's lives was the true purpose of magic tools. He explains that he hopes the items will be of use to them. Glands looks on with a bead of sweat on his temple, while Rita, her hands clasped, murmurs Kaido's alias, her cheeks flushing with emotion. Her initial shock gives way to pure excitement. Rita gratefully accepts the gift, proclaiming that she can now prepare even better meals for Kaido. Glands, equally eager, asks her to teach him how to use it immediately. As she begins to cook, Rita is astounded by the magic stove's capabilities. It lights instantly, and she marvels at how easily she can control the flame. Kaido watches her, smiling, pleased that she likes it. While she cooks, Glanz turns his attention to the storage unit, asking if it truly keeps food fresh just by placing it inside. Kaido confirms that it does, preserving even meat and fish for long periods. Glanz admits he's never seen one in person before, as the batter for their meal sizzles on the new stove. He recognizes the food being prepared, pancakes. Rita affirms his guess, explaining her reasoning. She notes how difficult it is to get the temperature just right for thick ones, which usually end up either burnt or undercooked, and had hoped this new magic stove would solve that problem. The result is a perfectly cooked, fluffy pancake resting on a plate. Glanz lets out a cry of astonishment at the sight. He turns to Rita, praising her for getting the hang of the new tools so quickly and calling her work impressive. She laughs bashfully at the compliment, while Kaido looks on, content. The impressive performance of the stove brings a practical concern to Glanz's mind. He reasons that such a high-end magical tool must require a large and expensive magic stone for fuel, worrying that they won't be able to afford a replacement if it runs out of power. Kaido quickly dismisses his concerns. Glanz presses the point, recalling that magic tools are typically luxury items because they require large, standardized magic stones. Kaido agrees that this is normally the case, but reveals a crucial detail. He has modified the stove to run on common junk stones. He adds that it is currently powered by a simple magic stone from a Borderlands goblin, leaving Glanz speechless. He elaborates, stating that this is a special custom model that only he and his master can create, meaning not even royalty or nobles possess such a thing. The weight of this revelation dawns on Glanz and Rita, who break out in a cold sweat. Glanz stammers that this is far more than a luxury item. It's a priceless, epic-making invention. Kaido and Rita stand before a two-story house, their backs to the viewer. A collective cry of utter disbelief escapes them as they stare, stunned by the sight. Nearby, a group of villagers gossips about the commotion. One man notes how lively Glanz's place has become recently. A woman adds that the young man staying there, Kaido, is rumored to be their benefactor. One of the men, who has a scar over his eye, had initially thought Kaido was a shady character, but now concedes that he seems decent, given how Glanz's family acts. However, another young man with a dark headband overhears this and seethes. He refuses to be fooled, convinced it's an act, and internally vows to expose Kaido for what he truly is. Claers makes his way along a path that cuts through the dense woods. He is suddenly confronted by a young villager who steps out from behind a tree, demanding to know how Claers knew his name. Claers calmly reveals that he knows the boy is Kiza, explaining that Glanz had told him about Kiza's father being a member of the village guard. He warns Kiza that they are the Borderlands and advises him to turn back. Kiza retorts that it is his duty to keep an eye on strangers to protect the village. The young guard remains unconvinced, believing that Glanz was fooled and is far too trusting. He is certain that Claers has ulterior motives for being there. As Claers turns to leave, Kiza calls out for him to wait. He acknowledges that Claers doesn't trust him, but asks that he at least keep his watch inside the village. He seems to think he knows what the traveler is after. He then furiously accuses Claers of being after Rita, vowing that he won't let the stranger lay a hand on her. Claers, however, seems unconcerned, quietly musing to himself that this must be what people call youth, as Kiza continues to shout at him. Ignoring the accusations, he continues on his path, leaving Kiza to watch him disappear into the woods, wondering if he is truly headed for the Borderlands. The young villager's apprehension is rooted in a memory of his father's stern warning, never to venture into that forest alone and to turn back immediately. Yet, his fear is contradicted by the words of Rita and another village boy. He recalls them praising Claers, with Rita dreamily recounting how cool he was when he wiped out an entire horde of monsters in an instant, and the other boy agreeing that Claers is their savior. The memory flashes to the event itself. Claers, wielding orbs of crackling energy, unleashing powerful wind magic that effortlessly sliced through massive tree trunks as if they were twigs. He began his work with practiced efficiency. With a gesture, he drew moisture from the felled trees using water magic, then leveled the uneven ground with earth magic. Finally, using telekinesis, he lifted the prepared logs, assembling them in midair. With a final, solid thud, the structure was complete. He stood back, hands on his hips, to admire the simple but sturdy wooden shelter he had erected. Sitting atop his creation, he felt a sense of satisfaction. He noted that with the trees cleared, sunlight now streamed through, making the area feel much less like the foreboding Borderlands. He mused on the strangeness of the situation. If clearing trees and leveling the ground was all it took, someone should have developed this land by now. He found it odd that despite the kingdom's centuries-long efforts, there was still no sign of human settlement. The reason, he suspected, was the dense mana and the powerful monsters it attracted. He decided this was why a test run was necessary. He would leave the structure overnight and see what happened by morning, questioning if the kingdom had simply given up or if there was a deeper reason for the land's abandonment. Returning to the village, he found a small crowd gathered. He overheard their worried whispers. The field was empty, and someone was missing. They wondered when the person was last seen, speculating if they'd fallen in a pond. As he watched, a muscular man with a scar over his eye turned and recognized him. The man, identified as Kiza's father, Alzum, looked startled to see him. Alzum's expression quickly turned grave. He explained that Kiza hadn't returned home. He recounted the village rule. No one goes outside after sunset because the forest becomes dangerous, with creatures from the borderlands emerging. Kiza had always followed that rule, but tonight he was gone. Clay listened, a worried look on his face. He voiced a faint hope that Kiza had simply fallen asleep somewhere within the village. But a darker possibility dawned on him. Kiza could have chased him into the forest. Taking charge, he told Alzum he would finish checking the village before heading into the forest himself, asking to be notified if Kiza was found first. He resolved to find the missing boy, raising 2 fingers to his temple. He had to check it out. In response, he cast a spell. Concentric rings of light pulsed outwards from his position, a wave of detection magic spreading through the area. The spell yielded its results. There was no sign of Kiza in the village, confirming his fears. The boy was in the forest. With grim determination, he knew he had to go after him. He broke into a sprint, plunging into the dark woods. He lamented that his detection magic only worked within a 2-kilometer radius, unlike Terida's 5-kilometer range. To compensate, he decided to keep the spell active while running. Suddenly, his magic flared. He'd found him 2 kilometers ahead. For the moment, Kiza seemed to be okay. His relief was short-lived as the spell revealed a new presence, a giant monster, right near Kiza. He pushed himself faster, shouting Kiza's name into the night, urging him to hold on. Unseen by him, Kiza was huddled behind a rock, trembling in terror. The source of his fear was a colossal, bear-like beast with a single horn on its snout. It stood on a rise just before him, its sheer size dwarfing the surrounding trees. The creature was a red grizzly, a monster from the borderlands. Kiza couldn't understand why it had wandered so far. A wave of panic washed over him as he imagined his father or the other villagers stumbling upon this beast while searching for him. He knew he had to escape and warn everyone to stay out of the forest. But as he braced himself to flee, the massive red grizzly simply laid down in the clearing. To Kiza's astonishment, the beast appeared to have fallen asleep. Seeing his opportunity, he realized this might be his only chance. With extreme caution, Kiza began to creep away from the slumbering monster. He put some distance between them, pausing to look back with a relieved, yet still terrified, expression. The beast remained still, its deep breaths echoing softly through the trees. He loses his footing while trying to escape, tumbling hard to the ground. A moment of panic flashes across his face as he realizes his mistake. As he sits stunned on the forest floor, Clay's voice cuts through the air, calling his name. But it is too late. The red grizzly has awakened, its colossal, horned shadow looming over them both. The awakened beast wastes no time, swiping a massive claw that sends Kiza flying through the trees. Clay can only watch in horror, cursing his inability to intervene in time. Before he can move towards the fallen boy, 2 enormous, spectral wolves materialize from the shadows and lunge at him. After dispatching the beasts, he rushes to Kiza's side. The boy is bleeding profusely from a massive gash across his torso. Clay reassures him that he'll be safe now. But Kiza, questioning why a stranger would come for him, laughs weakly. He believes there's no way he can survive such a wound. Lying on the forest floor under the moonlight, Kiza reflects on his actions. He realizes he wasn't the victim. He was the idiot who broke the rules for a foolish reason and brought this fate upon himself. His thoughts drift to a memory of Clay and Rita. He recalls his confusion, wondering why someone strong enough to make a name for himself in the royal capital would bother coming to their remote village. He remembers the bitter jealousy he felt. In his eyes, Clay already had everything he ever wanted, and yet he felt that Clay was even taking Rita away from him. The memory fades as Clay places a hand over the grievous wound. A brilliant light erupts as he invokes a powerful spell, Exheal, pleading with a divine power to heal the boy's injuries. The light recedes, and Kiza sits up, looking down at his own chest. The fatal wound is gone, leaving only his torn, blood-soaked tunic. He stares in utter disbelief, unable to comprehend what just happened. He stares at his completely healed body, sweat beading on his brow. He exclaims that the healing was insane, that he truly believed he was going to die. Clay calmly asks if the pain is gone, adding that it's a good thing he survived. Kiza, still agitated, retorts that his survival isn't the point. Sitting up, he looks at Clay with a mixture of confusion and shame, asking why he would go to such lengths for someone who didn't even like him. Clay simply smiles, dismissing the past animosity as nothing serious, just a bit of cute jealousy. He continues, pointing out that he's the older one between them anyway. He urges Kiza to get up, reminding him that everyone is worried and that they can talk later. As they near the village, 2 residents spot their approach, their expressions filled with alarm. Clay enters the village, carrying an exhausted Kiza on his back. The villagers rush towards them, relieved to see them safe. Kiza spots his father in the crowd and calls out to him. Instead of a warm welcome, Kiza's father strikes him across the head, furiously yelling at him for his idiocy. He demands to know why Kiza went into the forest alone when he had been explicitly forbidden. Clay watches the violent outburst, completely taken aback. After his anger subsides, the man turns to Clay, his expression shifting to one of deep gratitude. He thanks him sincerely, stating that his son is alive only because of Clay's intervention. Clay humbly replies that he was just glad he could help. Kiza quickly interjects, proudly telling his father and the gathered villagers that Clay defeated a stray red grizzly. The news causes a stir. His father reacts with disbelief, questioning how that's possible when even veteran adventure parties from the borderlands struggle against such beasts. As proof, Clay hefts an enormous, dark magic stone. Kiza asks if it came from the grizzly, and Clay confirms it. The villagers gasp in amazement, one noting they have never seen a magic stone of that size before. He listened as Kiza's father explained the gravity of the situation. Whenever a stray monster from the borderlands appeared, the entire forest was locked down. All hunting and gathering ceased until the beast was killed. The man stressed that what Clay had done was a tremendous help to them all. His serious tone then broke into a booming laugh as he pulled Clay into a one-armed embrace. He announced to the village that they would throw a feast that night in honor of both Clay and Kiza making it home safely, declaring with a wide grin that this time, Clay had taken care of it all. As the village celebrated, a different scene was unfolding far away. Deep in the cold, stone corridors beneath the royal castle, another plan was being set into motion. Alone, cloaked figure descended a flight of stone stairs, their soft footsteps echoing in the silence. The figure continued down the dark, arched passageway, their voice a low murmur in the gloom as they confirmed this was the hiding place they sought. At the end of the hall, they came to a stop before a colossal, chained figure. It was the corpse of the Demon King. The visitor remarked on the being's overwhelming presence, a power that lingered even in death. Extending a hand towards the fallen king, the figure made a solemn vow. They would leave the rest to them, promising to see the king's wish fulfilled. Their true purpose was clear, to bring punishment upon the accursed hero. As this oath was sworn in the darkness, the royal faction began to make its move. Inside a bustling village hall, the air is filled with cheer and the clinking of mugs. Villagers celebrate around long tables, enjoying a hearty meal. Among them is the village chief, making his first appearance. Amidst the celebration, Kiza approaches Clay, accompanied by the village chief. The chief wishes to speak with him, and Kiza's father bows low, wanting to personally thank Clay for saving his son. Clay, however, insists that he should be the one expressing gratitude for being allowed to stay. He smiles warmly at the chief, offering his help with anything they might need. Kiza stands by silently, a small cut still visible on his cheek from the earlier battle. The young villager then startles Clay by bowing deeply, his voice filled with genuine gratitude. He confesses that he only survived the encounter because of Clay's intervention. Clay observes this sudden and dramatic change in tone. He continues, explaining that it has always been his dream to become an adventurer. However, he lacks the strength and connections to ever leave the village. Seeing an outsider like Clay arrive, he couldn't help but feel a surge of jealousy. Looking up with a face full of shame, Kiza admits how terribly he treated him. He fumbles for words, clearly embarrassed by his previous actions, while Clay listens intently. His embarrassment gives way to a desperate, impassioned plea. Clenching his fists, Kiza shouts, begging Clay to teach him how to fight and calling him Big Bro. The unexpected request, and especially the title, leaves Clay utterly stunned. His eyes widen in shock. Nearby, Yuka watches the scene unfold with a placid, knowing smile. His initial shock fades, replaced by a thoughtful, almost sly smile. It seems a decision has been made. It's his turn to respond. Later, as the villagers eat together under the evening sky, Yuka asks Clay if he's taken Kiza on as a disciple. Clay, sitting with Kiza and Rita, clarifies that he'll only train the boy when he has free time. He agrees to the training, explaining to a concerned Rita that there are things Kiza can't learn if he remains in the village forever. Though she questions if he has the time, he assures her he will teach the boy what he can, within reason. He smiles, recalling that he himself only grew stronger because his friends saw potential in him. He feels that if he can help Kiza grow by sharing what he knows, he would be glad to do so. Turning to the young man, he clarifies that the training won't be an intense, daily affair, but will take place between his work developing the borderlands. He adds that Kiza's father should remain his primary instructor. Kiza, clenching his fists in excitement, enthusiastically agrees. Later, as the three sit together, Kiza asks a question that has just occurred to him. Why is Clay trying to develop the borderlands? Clay explains that once he has developed the land and it is his own, he wants to invite his comrades there. His answer surprises them. As Kiza mutters that his friends must be powerful, Clay clarifies his reasoning. He simply believes the borderlands would be the best place for everyone to truly relax. His expression is earnest as he looks into the distance. He feels this is the only way he can truly repay them for everything they have done for him. Moved by his conviction, Kiza declares that he now really wants to meet Clay's comrades. Rita laughs, telling him he will definitely be surprised, as Clay's friends must be something else entirely. The next day, deep inside the borderlands, the forest is thick with ancient trees. Clay walks through the undergrowth, intending to check on the area he had cleared the day before. He stops short, bewildered. Where his clearing should be, a dense wall of massive trees now stands. He wonders if he took a wrong path, but he is certain this was the exact spot. He stares in disbelief at the colossal trees that have grown back overnight, even engulfing the pavilion he had built. It becomes clear why everyone gave up on developing this place. There's no natural way for this to happen. He suspects the cause lies elsewhere. Kneeling down, he touches the ground and confirms his theory. It's not just the mana in the air. The soil itself is saturated with an enormous amount of energy, feeding the rampant vegetation. He wonders how to even begin tackling such a terrifying phenomenon. As he mulls over the problem, Teritas approaches from behind, asking what he is doing. Lost in thought, Clay murmurs about the manna in the soil, a concept that sparks a memory from his past journeys. Teritas explains that the fields near his home are barren, unable to grow crops. To combat this, he has been channeling his own manna into the soil to act as nutrients. The explanation strikes Clay with a sudden realization. He reasons that if manna can enrich soil, then the opposite must also be true. If he can drain the excess manna from this land, he might be able to stop the unnatural growth entirely. Filled with new purpose, he decides to give it a shot. A complex magical sigil glows into existence between his hands as he prepares to cast a spell designed specifically to absorb mana from the soil. 3 days later, he is still working on the problem. He realizes he must reverse the effect of Teritas' technique and also devise a way to burn through the vast quantities of mana he absorbs. His concentration is broken by a familiar voice calling his name. It is Alzum, Kiza's father, waving as he approaches. He explains that Kiza told him about the development project, and he came to help as a way of saying thanks. Clay is genuinely pleased by the offer of help. Alzum admits he would have brought more people, but he is probably the only one in the village who can actually enter the borderlands. He gestures for Clay to follow him. As they walk, Alzum thinks to himself. He doesn't want to criticize the man who saved his son, but he knows the borderlands are not a place one person can handle on their own. Still, he can see Clay's confidence and doubts the young man would listen to a warning. He decides to stick around, waiting for the young man to give up on his own. Clay, however, feels a bit guilty, acknowledging that Alzum came all this way for what seems like a lost cause. He then gestures towards a clearing, revealing a newly constructed house standing where the dense forest once was. Clay announces that the work is already finished. Alzum stares, his face a mask of utter disbelief. Unfazed, Clay cheerfully welcomes him, declaring Alzum his very first guest and offering to make some tea. His shock gives way to frantic protest. He points out the futility of building anything here, as the borderlands trees grow back the moment they're cut down, which would ruin the house in no time. Clay calmly confirms this, recalling how pavilion he built met that exact fate. He then smiles confidently, stating that this very problem has already been solved. With a knowing look, he asks Alzum if he would like a demonstration. With a firm step, he plants his foot on the ground. As strange roots begin to retract into the earth, he begins his explanation. First, he says he cut down the trees and leveled the ground to clear the area. Alzum can only stammer in confusion. Then a vast and intricate magic circle erupts from the ground, bathing the clearing in light. Clay explains that he then layered 2 different types of magic and set them in place, leaving Alzum to stare in awe. He elaborates on the lower of the 2 circles, identifying it as a spell designed to absorb mana directly from the soil. He notes that it is the most mana-intensive spell he is capable of casting. The mechanism is a 2-part process. The lower spell absorbs the excess mana from the ground, and the upper spell continuously burns it off. He explains that once the soil is drained of its mana, the unnaturally fast-growing trees will no longer be able to grow back. He explained that this was the basic idea behind the setup. Now, all that was left was to activate the spell. With his hand outstretched over the glowing runes, a soft light began to emanate from the ground. The soft light erupted into a colossal pillar of raw energy, a vortex of mana tearing through the air with a deafening roar. The sheer force of the spell's activation was immense. Alzum could only watch, sweat beading on his brow, his teeth clenched in disbelief at the scale of the magic. Clay calmly stated that after this, all they had to do was wait for the mana to be completely consumed. Once the process was complete, the land was left barren and inert. Clay explained that he had observed the area for a few days to ensure no new trees sprouted back. Only then, on that cleared land, did he build his house. He looked from the cleared land to the house, a smile breaking across his face. Alzum remarked that it was insane how Clay had brute-forced his way through the biggest obstacle. Clay, pleased, invited him for a proper housewarming with drinks next time, adding that he was quite proud of the interior. Unseen by them, a small, dark figure watched from the deep woods. Alzum's smile vanished, his expression hardening as he sensed something amiss. His gaze shot towards the dark tree-line, a sudden tension filling the air. Clay noticed a shift and also turned to look. He saw the concern on Alzum's face and offered a reassuring smile, calmly speaking his name. He then revealed that he knew something was watching them. It had been there for a week, he explained, but since it hadn't made a single move, he had simply been leaving it alone. Alzum remained silent, processing the new information. He placed a hand on Alzum's shoulder, trying to ease his friend's tension. Alzum, still wary, asked if he was truly sure it was safe. Clay confirmed that it was, adding that there was another reason for his confidence. As he spoke, the true nature of the woods became apparent. They were not trees at all, but the colossal, petrified remains of some immense creature, its skeletal form creating a natural, imposing barrier around the clearing. He stands before Alzum, his form cast in shadow, exuding an immense pressure that causes the other man to break out in a cold sweat, his face contorted in fear. His expression shifts to one of unnerving confidence, as he declares that if a threat ever arises, he will handle it himself. Alzum can only manage a strained laugh, admitting that Clay is terrifying. As their conversation concludes, The unseen observer clicks their tongue in frustration and begins a swift retreat through the dense foliage. Leaping through the trees, the silhouetted figure's mind races, consumed by a single question. Just who is that human? The figure comes to a grim resolution. If he proves to be a threat to their territory, they will have no choice but to fight him. Meanwhile, in a different location, Teritas discusses a matter of security. He notes that the castle's underground holds special magic tools, making the possibility of a break-in a serious concern. Flora joins the conversation, her expression focused as she immediately deduces the topic of his concern must be the Demon King's corpse. She questions the value of the body, assuming it's just a corpse with no magic left. Teritas corrects her, explaining that the body is only intact because of a time-freezing spell and that a thief might still find something valuable within it. A wicked grin spreads across his face. He remarks that he'd rather burn the corpse himself than let someone else use it. He adds that raising the issue would likely make Conrad doubt Yuka's accomplishments, implying a cover-up. Flora listens, visibly annoyed. Her annoyance gives way to weariness. Flora laments that after defeating the Demon King, they are now heading toward conflict between humans. She feels used as a political pawn by the church, who are pushing her to marry Yuka. Teritas responds with a grim observation. World peace only ever meant the end of the war with demons. He states that humans can never truly escape war, as it is a constant cycle throughout their history. Despite the heavy political discussion, Flora's thoughts had drifted elsewhere. With a wistful, slightly flushed expression, she admitted to herself how much she truly wanted to see him. Her longing escaped as a quiet whisper, "Clay." In the background, the man himself stood near a doorway, his own expression unreadable. In a clearing, Clayers observes as Kiza holds a ready stance, sword in hand, preparing for another round of training. The young villager lunges forward, swinging his blade with newfound speed and precision, the air crackling with the force of his strike. Clay smiles, remarking that Kiza is finally getting the hang of it. Sweating, Kiza agrees, though he expresses frustration that it took him so long to grasp the technique. His demeanor shifts to one of urgency as he grabs Clay, asking if it's true that he's leaving Glanz's home to live in the borderlands. He pleads with Clay to stay in the village a while longer, but Clay seems hesitant to agree. He explains that his house is now finished, and he can't continue to impose on the family. He encourages Kiza to keep training even in his absence. Kiza insists he wants to learn directly from his Zaniki, but Clay reassures him, promising to check on his progress during future visits. Having said his goodbyes, Clay approaches his new, completed house in the borderlands, a sturdy two-story structure standing alone amidst the wilderness. Inside, he begins to arrange the furniture, sliding a wooden chair into place at a long table with a heavy scrape. He stands back, hands on his hips, and surveys the room. With a table, chairs, and a large bookshelf now in place, he reflects that it's finally starting to feel like a proper home. His gaze falls upon a simple bed frame, where a sleeping bag lies. Realizing he can't keep sleeping like that, he decides his next task is to prepare a proper bed, proud that he's crafted most of the furniture himself from local wood. A smile spreads across his face as he daydreams about the future. He envisions becoming fully self-sufficient with food, building a larger house to welcome others, making a homestead even more comfortable, and perhaps even constructing an outdoor bath. He looked out from his new home, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. He had the old laws to thank for this opportunity. The sheer scale of it was breathtaking. He had the freedom to develop the entire forest, a rare and incredible prospect that few ever receive. However, a practical problem soon surfaced in his mind. While he wanted to continue training Kiza directly, the round trip through the forest between the borderlands and Emiru village was simply too exhausting to make every day. He continued to ponder the issue. If only there were a safe path through the forest, it would be so much easier for him to travel back and forth. Kiza could even come to his place on her own then. Then, a bold solution formed in his mind. Perhaps he should just build one himself. A proper road. With this new purpose, he donned his cloak and headed out. He was already planning to speak with a merchant about bedding and crop seeds. He might as well ask about everything at once. He found Glanz and, over a meal with him and Rita, explained his ambitious project. The merchant listened, a look of amusement on his face. A road through the forest. Glanz repeated, remarking that Clay certainly came up with the wildest ideas. He earnestly explained his intention to clear part of the forest and build a paved road straight from the village to the borderlands. But he also acknowledged a potential obstacle. The forest was an important place for the people of Emiru. He elaborated, stating that the villagers relied on it for hunting and gathering, which is why he couldn't just mess with it on his own and wanted to discuss it first. Glanz considered this and replied that he thought it was a good idea. Personally, he didn't see a problem as long as the village chief gave his permission. Glanz then encouraged him to ask the chief the very next day. He added with a smile that Rita had been a bit lonely lately, and he was sure she'd be happy if she could visit more easily. Rita, sitting beside him, let out a flustered cry at her father's words. Clay turns to Rita, seeking confirmation about something he's heard. She becomes flustered, stammering as she tries to find the right words. She quietly affirms that it's true. With a blush, she admits that ever since he arrived, life has been more lively and fun. Clay is taken aback by her sudden confession. Her eyes welling up with hopeful emotion, she clasps her hands together and asks if Once the road is finally built, she might be able to come and visit him. He smiles warmly and agrees without hesitation. To reassure her, he explains his plan to embed magic tools along the path to keep monsters away, ensuring it will be safe enough for her to travel alone. Rita's face lights up with joy. He pauses for a moment, a thoughtful look on his face as he considers an additional precaution. He then suggests that even with the safeguards, it would be better if she came with someone who could fight. He offers a specific name with a friendly smile. Kiza. She considers the idea, remarking that Kiza has been training hard lately and might actually be reliable now. Hearing this, Clay clenches his fist, silently cheering Kiza on. The following day arrives, the sun casting its light over the village. Inside an office, Clay, now wearing his cloak, stands before the village chief. The chief thoughtfully repeats Clay's proposal aloud, confirming his intention to build a road through the forest. He asks if it's a bad idea, but the chief waves off his concern. He explains that he was merely surprised, as there is no problem with the plan. In fact, he reveals, the forest already contains an old path, the remnants of a road built in ancient times. The village chief's revelation solidified Clay's next step. To clear a path, he needed to find that exact spot. He reasoned that the local hunters and wardens would know its precise location, and decided he would ask Alzum to guide him. He turned back to the elder, expressing his sincere gratitude not only for agreeing to the project so readily, but also for the invaluable information. The chief dismissed the thanks, stating that it was nothing, especially since Clay had also helped Kiza. He continued, explaining that Emiru village was originally founded by a scouting party whose mission was to develop the borderlands. As a descendant of those very pioneers, the chief declared his desire to support Clay in fulfilling the dream they had been forced to abandon. Moved by the weight of this history and the elder's earnest support, Clay was momentarily speechless before managing a quiet, heartfelt thank you. Later, having secured Alzum's help, Clay followed him deep into the forest, the tall, pale trees surrounding them on all sides. Alzum eventually stopped and pointed toward the forest floor. He told Clay to look closely at the broken stone tiles peeking through the undergrowth, identifying them as the last remnants of the old road. Kneeling to inspect the path, Clay wondered aloud how old it could be. Alzum admitted he didn't know for sure, but speculated it was easily over 100 years old, as it was already in this condition when he first began walking through the forest. He explained that while the path was clearer than the rest of the woods, their work involved two main tasks: felling the trees and laying down new stone tiles. Clay agreed, thinking it was similar to building his house, but easier since they weren't in the borderlands. With the plan established, Alzum declared it was time to start. They immediately set to work. As Alzum began felling trees, Clay invoked his magic. A sharp wind cutter sliced through timber, and with a powerful upthrust, he tore the old, broken stones from the earth. With the old path cleared, he slammed his hands toward the ground and cast ground press. The earth compacted with immense force, creating a perfectly level foundation and leaving Alzum staring in awe at the raw power on display. He surveyed the newly cleared path, deciding to wait until the entire route was clear before laying the stone tiles. Alzum, standing nearby, was already impressed, remarking that the path was good enough to be a proper road as it was. He turned to Alzum with a determined smile, announcing his intention to clear the rest of the old road all the way to the borderlands. Before he could continue, Alzum held up a hand, telling him to wait. The older man asked in disbelief if he was planning to complete the entire project that very day. Clay cheerfully confirmed it and urged Alzum to lead the way. A short while later, a perfectly paved stone road stretched out before Alzum's eyes, gleaming under the sky. He stood in stunned silence, gazing at the completed path that now connected the forest to the village in the distance. He couldn't believe Clay had actually finished the entire thing. Clay apologized for keeping him out so late, but Alzum brushed it off, admitting it was worth it just to witness something so incredible. Alzum noted that with the new road, his son Kiza, who had been wanting to visit for a while, would now be able to come on his own. Clay agreed, adding that it would make teaching him easier as well. His expression then turned serious. Before anything else, he had something to ask Clay. He explained that Kiza's solo training was paying off, as his movements had become sharper and he was improving faster than expected. Alzum had been on the verge of advancing him to the next stage of training. He then posed a direct question, asking Clay if he had ever checked Kiza's skill seed. Alzum repeated the term, unfamiliar with it. Clay explained that if Kiza genuinely wanted to become an adventurer, he should at least know what talents he possesses, or risk missing out on opportunities his entire life. In response, Alzum admitted that he didn't think anyone in the village had ever checked it. The young man reflected that he hadn't known his own skill seed until he met his companions. Alzum elaborated on the difficulty for those in the remote borderlands, explaining that skill seeds can only be checked with magic tools at a church. The closest one was in the royal capital, a journey that was both difficult and expensive. He then proposed an alternative, asking Alzum if it would be all right for him to check Kiza's skill seed. Alzum, looking perplexed, replied that he wouldn't mind, but was clearly confused about how that would be possible. Alzum immediately questioned if this meant Clay was planning to take Kiza all the way to the capital. Clay quickly dismissed the idea, stating that was not his intention at all. Instead, he revealed his true plan with a confident smile. He was going to create a magic tool that could check skill seeds himself. The declaration left Alzum utterly speechless and wide-eyed with shock. He elaborated, acknowledging that while skill seed checkers are technically restricted to ownership by the church, the method to create them is a state secret. Crucially, his master knew how to make one, and therefore, so did he. Alzum, looking utterly weary, stated that he wasn't even going to react to such incredible claims anymore. He asked if there was anything Clay couldn't do, then correctly guessed that the magic tool would be finished by the next day. He then extended the offer to Alzum, asking if he'd like his own skill seed checked as well. Clay added that if anyone else in the village was interested, he would check all of them together. Alzum readily agreed. As Alzum turned to leave, saying he needed to hurry back and ask around before curfew, Clay called out for him to wait a moment. He raised his hand, and in an instant, the dark forest path ahead of them became illuminated by countless points of magical, sparkling light, casting a gentle glow upon the trees and the road. Clay explained that even with the newly built road, it was still dangerous to walk through the dark forest. The lights would ensure a safe journey back for Alzum. Alzum, though impressed and grateful, found the display a bit too romantic for a simple walk through the woods, jokingly asking if Clay was trying to charm him. In response, Clay smiled and offered to escort him all the way home. He listened as Alzum, walking beside him, voiced the thoughts that had clearly been weighing on him. Alzum recounted Clay's recent feats, clearing an entire road in a day, casually using powerful magic, and now, offering to build a skill seed checker. The question hung in the air, sharp and direct. Alzum pressed further, his gaze fixed on Clay, demanding to know his true identity. He offered a simple, disarming smile. He claimed to be just a regular villager, someone who came to the borderlands chasing a dream of developing the region. Yet, behind this humble declaration, images of his past flashed. A lone figure standing defiant before the monstrous beast general and the imposing demon king. The following day, a buzz of anticipation filled the village air. Standing with a pleased-looking Alzum and a curious Rita, Clay looked out at the gathering crowd, a hint of surprise on his face. He admitted that he had only asked them to gather anyone who was interested. His surprise turned to shock as he took in the full scene. It wasn't just a few interested people. The entire village had turned out. A voice from the crowd called out, stating the obvious. Of course, everyone wants to know. Clay was left speechless, overwhelmed by the sheer number of people who had come. A noisy crowd of villagers has gathered in the town square. Alzum, a man with a prominent scar, remarks to a companion that offering free skill checks was a bad idea, as it seems the entire village has shown up. His companion agrees, noting that it will be interesting to see what kind of skill seeds are discovered. Nearby, Clay looks on, surprised by the massive turnout. Directing his skepticism at Clay, Alzum gestures towards the large, smooth slate the young man is holding. He questions if this is truly the skill checker Clay made, commenting that to him. It just looks like a plain metal plate. In response, Clay enthusiastically explains that its base is made of mithril, a magic conductor, and that he has incorporated additional circuits to display the results accurately. Alzum cuts him off, stating bluntly that he doesn't need a technical explanation he won't understand. As they stand there, the village chief emerges from a nearby building. He addresses Clay directly, asking if he might be the first to try the device. The chief steps forward. Clay places the slate on a wooden counter and instructs the elder to place one hand upon its surface. He does so, placing his hand flat on the slate. Clay explains that he must wait for about 30 seconds for the skill seed to be displayed. Alzum watches with his arms crossed, intrigued. While they wait, Clay elaborates on the device's features. He points out that, unlike the church's skill checker, the results on his device can only be seen by the person being tested, ensuring their privacy. He confirms this is a deliberate design choice. He then adds a serious warning, advising the chief not to carelessly reveal his skill seed to others. He explains that villains, or even the church, might try to exploit or forcibly recruit individuals with valuable skills. The chief's expression turns grim as he listens. He recalls having heard such stories before, of a child who possessed the Saintess skill seed being forcibly taken away by the church. A bright light suddenly emanates from a slate. The village chief gasps as glowing runes and text appear on its surface, revealing his skill. Clay, looking on, tells the chief he understands and will take care of warning the other villagers. As the village chief held his hand over the device, glowing runes solidified into a single, powerful title, Ruler. He stared at the result, a quiet thought forming in his mind. He looked up, asking about the ruler skill, one he had never heard of. Clay, surprised and impressed, explained that it was an incredibly rare and excellent skill, perfectly suited for a village chief. He elaborated that it was also known as the commander skill. If the church or military discovered someone with such an ability, they would be scouted for their forces without question. Clay quickly added that, of course, such a thing wouldn't happen to the chief now. The chief's gaze grew distant as he lamented possessing such a grand skill at his advanced age. His words caught Clay off guard, who wondered aloud if the chief wished he had known about it when he was younger. He shook his head, a faint, knowing smile on his face. No, he replied, explaining that if he had known back then, he would have lived a much more reckless life. His perspective was clear. Now, as the village chief, he could finally look forward with purpose. Clay listened, a sense of understanding dawning on him. Realizing he had perhaps pried too deeply into the old man's past, Clay offered a sincere apology for his impertinent question, but the chief simply waved it off. With the matter settled, the village chief turned to the younger villagers who had gathered nearby. He dismissed his own story as an old man's ramblings and expressed his heartfelt gratitude to Clay for giving the village's youth a chance to discover their own potential. Clay watched the villagers, realizing that the chief's leadership was likely why this remote village had survived so well. Joined by Alzum, he turned to the growing crowd, announcing that it was time for everyone to line up and get their skills checked. At his instruction, a line quickly formed, a quiet buzz of anticipation filling the village square as everyone waited their turn. As the skill assessments get underway, the villagers banter among themselves. One suggests Kiza might be a cook, wondering if he's any good. Rita chimes in, noting he's a good reader and teacher. Glanz agrees, proposing teacher as a more fitting, if equally unflattering, skill for him. Kiza bristles at the teasing, shouting at them to be quiet. Nearby, Glanz's own assessment concludes. Clay reads the result from the glowing seed. Negotiator. He remarks that it's a fitting skill, as Glanz is already quite persuasive. He muses that if Glanz were to join the army, such a skill would be highly sought after for recruitment. Next, Alzum presents his skill seed. The result materializes Guardian Warrior. He stares at the glowing text, his expression unreadable. He turns to Clay, asking if he knows what the skill entails. Clay sweats nervously, admitting that in his haste to check everyone's skill seeds, he'd forgotten to give them a proper warning or explanation. Alzum clarifies that Guardian Warrior is a fine skill seed. He had expected a combat-oriented skill due to his adventuring past, but this is good. He explains that it synergizes well with defensive skills like fighting spirit and even sorcery. He then looks pointedly at Clay, questioning the idea of himself using sorcery with a grimace. He then breaks into a grin, remarking that for someone who protects others, Guardian Warrior is a surprisingly fitting title. Clay watches him, a small smile forming as he processes the man's good-natured reaction. The young man observes that everyone seems pleased with their results. Alzum turns serious again, telling Clay that his own true skill seed is a different kind of killer move, one that has already been judged. Clay looks back, confused by the cryptic statement. His gaze drifts to the gathered villagers. The chief calls out, expressing hope that the hero Yuka will summon Clay again soon. He warmly invites Clay to visit them anytime, assuring him he will always be welcome. A genuine smile spreads across Clay's face as he takes in their kindness. The warmth of the moment triggers a cold memory. He recalls his own ceremony in a grand, sterile hall, where he was granted useless skills like mimicry and hole digger. He remembers the feeling that his world was ended. His reverie is broken by Alzum's voice. The older man advises him that a skill seed only reveals one's aptitude, nothing more. He speaks of children who, burdened by their parents' expectations, are sometimes handed a harsh verdict on that very spot. Clay listens, thinking to himself that perhaps it's better to just take things easy. He watched as Alzum waved enthusiastically from the crowd, laughing and calling out that everyone in the village understood. Alzum referred to him as Big Bro, a sign of their newfound camaraderie. As the assessments continued, Kiza eagerly declared that it was finally his turn. Beside him, Rita calmly stated that she didn't particularly mind, but since her father had insisted, she would have her skill checked as well. The young man approached the table where Clay waited. Clay noted that they were the last two and instructed Kiza to place his hand on the board. As Kiza agreed, a flicker of concern crossed Clay's mind. He hoped nothing would go wrong. He complied, pressing his palm firmly against the surface. A brilliant light immediately flared from the board, enveloping his hand. The results materialized before them. For Kiza, the words read, Magic Swordsman. For Rita, high-rank magic tool master. Both looked on in stunned silence. Breaking the silence, Kiza asked what a magic swordsman even was, wondering if it was a good skill. Rita added that she had never made a magic tool in her life. Kiza then turned to Clay, demanding to know what his skill seed meant. His eyes wide with shock, Clay struggled for words before confirming that Kiza's magic swordsman was a high-rank skill seed. The revelation left him momentarily speechless. Regaining his composure, he began to explain. A magic swordsman, he detailed, is a composite skill born from the fusion of swordsman and sorcerer. He clarified that both of these base skills have their own advanced forms, Great Swordsman and Great Sorcerer, which are themselves considered high-rank skills. He continued, revealing that Magic Swordsman was a composite of those even higher forms, Great Swordsman and Great Sorcerer. Clay admitted that it was the first time he had ever seen such a skill. Kiza beamed, fist clenched in triumph. Though he confessed he didn't fully understand, he was thrilled to know his skill was amazing. Watching him, Clay felt a sense of relief, thinking it was a good thing he had checked. He then resolved that it was time to tell Kiza the truth. He begins by explaining the immense potential held within Kiza's skill. Should a magic swordsman knight appear in the capital, it would cause a tremendous stir. It is a super rare skill seed, one that could pave the way to becoming a knight captain. He continues, warning that if he were to convey this information, they might find themselves swept up in rigorous training. Turning his attention to Rita, he reveals that her skill is similarly impressive, a high-rank magic tool master skill seed. The news prompts a weary sigh from her. She seeks clarification, asking if this truly means she has a talent for crafting magic tools. He confirms it, adding that while it's true, there are many different skills a magic tool master can acquire over time. The possibilities swirl in her mind, overwhelming her. Magic tool creation, alchemy, the brewing of magic potions, the intricate design of magic formations, and countless other disciplines. He then suggests a practical way to start, proposing that she could make magic tools for glands to sell. Rita seems hesitant, admitting that she doesn't have any real sense of this newfound potential yet. In response to her uncertainty, he offers to teach her the basics himself, revealing that he is also capable of magic tool creation. His unexpected offer leaves her surprised and speechless. After a moment's thought, she turns away from him. She politely declines, stating that she is fine just as she is for now. Her refusal clearly catches him off guard. He asks if she is certain. With a faint, melancholic smile, she confirms her decision, explaining that she has no intention of forcing herself into something she isn't ready for. His focus then shifts back to Kiza. Clay announces they must revise the boys' training plan immediately. It should incorporate magic alongside swordsmanship. Kiza is initially stunned, questioning if he could truly use magic, but his shock quickly morphs into pure excitement as he shouts his desire to try. The boy rushes over to his father, Alzum, excitedly proclaiming that he might become a mage. As father and son share the moment, Clay watches them from a short distance, a quiet, contemplative look on his face. He looked upon the villagers, Kiza excitedly showing off to his father, Rita standing quietly with glands, and a thought surfaced. Something was strange. The skill seeds they possessed were simply too good. His thoughts continued, recalling what he'd been told. It was unheard of for an entire village to have such excellent skills. He wondered if there was some condition, some hidden requirement, that the people of Emil Village had unknowingly fulfilled. As he pondered this, the village chief remarked that if he'd known about this potential when he was younger, he would have built a grand mansion in the capital by now. He then jokingly called Clay a fool. He looked out at the crowd, realizing that whatever the reason for their gifts, the people of this borderland village represented a wealth of human resources. This was undoubtedly important information. This realization prompted him to consider his next move. He thought about sending a letter and consulting with Yuka. A memory from the capital surfaced. A nobleman noting that the second prince had far less backing than the first, which was why he'd been sent to the frontier to deal with the Demon King. The prince he had considered contacting, second Prince Yuka, Fargas Altonia, was already there. Yuka stated his intention to gather talented people for the good of the country. Alzum, however, was wary, asking if his son was getting involved in something strange again. Kiza, full of admiration, thought his new master was incredible, leading Alzum to concede that perhaps the boy had found a good mentor after all. Several days passed. Clay ventured alone into the dense wilderness near the borderlands. He walked with a purpose, determined to solve the mystery of that day. He needed to understand why a creature like the red grizzly, which had attacked Kiza, had emerged from the borderlands in the first place. He ventured deeper, knowing that the borderlands were saturated with a dense magical power. The creatures that lived within that miasma should not have been able to leave its confines. His investigation led him back to the villagers. Alzum explained that after asking around, he learned that while swarms of goblins had appeared recently, the emergence of a monster as powerful as a red grizzly from the borderlands was something that had never happened before. He processes this new information, his expression turning grim. Something unprecedented is indeed happening in the borderlands. His thoughts drift back to that moment, to Kiza bloodied and barely alive. If he had been even a little later, he had gone to the trouble of building a road precisely to prevent such tragedies. With renewed resolve, he pushes forward, determined to find the cause of this disturbance and put a stop to it. Deep within the borderlands, Clayers carves a path through the dense forest, his blade flashing as he cleaves through a massive tree trunk with formidable force. He stands before the result of his battle, a large, horned beast, now slain. He surveys the area, noting that this is the place. Having dispatched the beast, he sets up a small camp and begins to cook a large cut of its meat over a crackling fire. He reflects that he feels like he's come quite deep into the borderlands, yet he still can't grasp their full scope. His meal is interrupted when his gaze is drawn to a faint, pulsing light emanating from a dark crevice between the ancient trees nearby. Suddenly, that light erupts into a massive, chaotic blast, unleashing a torrent of dark energy that tears through the forest. His gaze remains fixed and serious, his attention locked on the source of the blast. He raises a hand, effortlessly conjuring a shimmering, circular barrier that deflects another wave of dark power. The barrier holds, and he reflects on the outcome, murmuring to himself about how to properly adjust the power output. His practice, however, has not gone unnoticed. From the shadows of the woods, a tall, elegant woman emerges, her silent approach startling him. Her features are striking. He immediately recognizes her otherworldly beauty and long, pointed ears. It's an elf. She simply stared, her expression unreadable. Breaking the silence, Clay gestured to the meal he had prepared and asked if she was able to eat the meat of monsters. He offered a welcoming smile, the table set with 2 full plates and mugs, a clear invitation to share his meal. Her initial caution softened. She admitted that she had only intended to observe him while he rested, but since he had invited her, she would be happy to join him. As they began to eat, he chewed thoughtfully, processing the unexpected turn of events. He watched her eat with a serene grace, the surrounding flowers making the simple campsite feel almost like a castle garden. The situation was surreal. He never imagined he would meet an elf in these borderlands. A flicker of suspicion crossed his mind as he wondered if she had been targeting him just moments before. She seemed to sense his thoughts, clarifying that she had only been observing him. She then asked if he believed elves were only found in the sacred tree country of Elfra. He confirmed that was the common understanding, adding that it was just as unusual for humans to be casually traversing this region. He was taken aback by how readily she admitted to her surveillance. The thought struck him that despite sharing a meal, they had not yet even introduced themselves. Taking the initiative, he stated his name was Clay. He went on to explain that he was a simple villager, considering cultivating the land in this very area. In response, she introduced herself as Charlotte of the Verta tribe. She revealed that she was an elf who lived nearby, a statement that left Clay utterly stunned. He processed her words in disbelief. She lived in this remote borderland? Charlotte affirmed it, clarifying that her home was much deeper within the forest than his current location, gesturing toward the vast, dark woods that surrounded his small, isolated camp. Charlotte explains with a gentle smile that the forest is far more populated than most humans believe it to be. He reacts with disbelief, questioning if even demons reside here. Charlotte confirms that, to her knowledge, elves, beastmen, and demons all inhabit these lands. She elaborates that many nations enslave other races, and the long-lived elves are particularly prized as a source of vitality. She continues, clarifying that in the demon lands, humans are not even considered enemies. They are simply prey, hunted on sight. The realization dawns on him. So that's what the borderlands are, he murmurs. Charlotte affirms this, explaining it's a refuge for races driven out by humans. She adds with a placid expression that the scarcity of humans is a welcome feature. As they sit across from each other, she concedes that life in the borderlands is not easy. However, she states, one must choose their threat, humans or monsters. She elaborates that her people have simply chosen the lesser of two evils. Turning the topic to him, she notes that he and his companions came to cultivate this frontier, revealing that they have been doing the same, with each race developing the land according to their own methods. The news stuns him. He had come here to build a safe haven for his companions, only to discover that other races had already settled this land long ago. A sudden, cold realization grips him. To her, a refugee from human persecution, he must appear as just another encroaching human. He wonders if this means she has been watching him all along, a potential threat to her hard-won home. He hesitantly asks why she is cultivating the land, and her answer startles him. She states it is because he is a terrifying presence. Before he can process this, she admits that she initially believed he was an assassin sent to eliminate them. Flustered, he denies being frightening, insisting he only came to investigate and had no intention of fighting. Charlotte looks down thoughtfully, acknowledging that this now seems to be the case. He listened as Charlotte continued her explanation. She asked if he was truly unaware of the vast number of spirits that had gathered around him, stating that from the perspective of the elves, his very presence was a menace. Her words prompted him to look around, and for the first time he saw it. The air was thick with countless glowing orbs and ethereal, butterfly-like spirits, all swirling around him. He could only manage a sound of pure confusion. He turned his head away, a bead of sweat tracing its way down his temple, utterly speechless at the revelation. Finding his voice, he insisted there was no way he could have known. He questioned her, asking if only elves, with their innate spirit magic, were capable of perceiving such beings. He reasoned internally that as a human, seeing spirits should be impossible. He recalled Tarita's mentioning he had a certain aptitude for it, but hearing it from an actual elf, a member of a race intrinsically connected to spirits, made the reality undeniable. He then asked the obvious question, why were so many spirits gathered around him? Charlotte explained that long ago, there was a clan known as the Spirit's Beloved Children, who, much like him, possessed the ability to draw spirits to themselves in great numbers. She continued her tale, describing how when a woman from this clan became emotional, the spirits would react in kind, manipulating the weather to match her feelings, causing great downpours or intense heat waves. Clay listened, finding the story somewhat difficult to believe. The story took a dark turn. Charlotte revealed that ultimately, the woman had exploded, leaving nothing but a massive crater several kilometers wide in her wake. The sheer scale of the destruction left Clay aghast, exclaiming that such a power was far too dangerous. She then brought the point home, asking if he now understood her caution. It was only natural to be wary of a man who was essentially a walking bomb wandering near her home. Clay, looking troubled, had to admit that he couldn't argue with her logic. Not want to be a nuisance, he asked if there was anything he could do to alleviate her concerns. He pushed a thick, ornate bracelet across the table towards her, offering it as a solution. Charlotte looked down at the object, her expression unreadable. She listens as he explains the item he offered. He calls it his spirit bracelet, clarifying that with it, even a human who cannot use spirit magic can easily make requests of the spirits. He formally asks her to accept it. He seeks to confirm his understanding, asking if the spirits will now do as he asks. She affirms this, and he realizes that with the bracelet, he can finally give them direct instructions. Surprised by her generosity, he asks if she came all this way just to deliver the item to him. She confirms it, adding that she was simply being honest in her assessment of his character. Flustered but grateful, he accepts the tool. His fingers close around the ornate, diamond-patterned bracelet. With her task seemingly complete, she announces her departure. He stops her, however, stating he has one last question. He asks if she has noticed any recent changes in the surrounding area. She seems confused by the question, so he clarifies that he isn't referring to himself. He explains that a red grizzly has recently appeared in the nearby fox forest. At the mention of the beast, her expression shifts to one of understanding. She confirms that there has indeed been a stir about a powerful monster appearing nearby. He presses further, asking if she has any idea what might be causing it. She admits that she has no idea. He apologizes for being unable to help, but she tells him not to worry, then formally introduces herself as Charlotte. He smiles warmly at her introduction and asks if she would be willing to meet with him again sometime. She turns to leave, ethereal light swirling around her as she agrees, but adds a condition: if there's a next time. She departed as swiftly as she had arrived, a gust of wind marking her passage. Clay remained seated, watching her disappear into the forest. He watched the spot where she vanished, a thoughtful expression on his face. He realized that despite her power, he had sensed no killing intent from her at all, as if she had completely masked. His gaze fell to the bracelet she had given him. While she had appeared friendly, he concluded that she was not someone he could trust just yet. He sat alone in the quiet clearing, considering their shared circumstances. Since they both lived on the fringes of society, he thought perhaps it would be good if they could get along. Meanwhile, deeper within the woods, Charlotte walked alone, her thoughts turning to the man she called Claire's. She acknowledged that he was indeed a powerful person, but for now, she didn't sense any immediate danger from it. Her expression hardened with resolve. She could not afford to be careless. Any potential threat must be dealt with. With that thought, she pressed onward through the dense woods. She came to a halt, her calm facade cracking. She admitted to herself that she knew the truth. The reason the red grizzly had been chased from its home. A monster, even stronger than the grizzly, had appeared in her own territory, and she had been unable to escape it. Her journey had brought her before a colossal, ancient tree that radiated an immense and overwhelming presence. Her mind flashes back to the source of her exile. A colossal, winged demon, wreathed in shadow, looming over her. She recalls her terror, thinking of that human and that guy, and questioning why such a thing had come past. Meanwhile, back in the village, a stir of activity breaks the morning quiet. Residents gather in small groups, their voices a low murmur of confusion and speculation. The source of the disturbance is a woman with long, flowing hair, holding an ornate staff. She calmly states that she was left behind by the association of Shinto priests. Nearby, Alzum asks another villager about the fuss. The man explains that a visitor from the capital has arrived, specifically seeking Clay. When Alzum presses for details, the man admits he only caught a quick look, but describes the visitor as an incredible beauty named Flora. 3 years after the subjugation of the Demon King, a group of heroes arrives at a borderland orphanage. As the children cheer for the hero's return, a young boy named Kaido watches them approach. Prince Yuka reassures the excited children, telling them that with the local monsters defeated, they can now play outside without fear. As they erupt in thanks, Clay quietly asks Flora if she is the one providing aid to this church orphanage. She confirms, stating that she simply wants to do what she can. His expression hardens. Clay questions her methods, suggesting that merely defeating monsters should be sufficient. He argues that their true purpose is to defeat the Demon King, and that everyone would be better off if they focused solely on that singular, efficient goal. Flora listens silently, her gaze distant. She concedes that if one were to speak of efficiency, he would be correct. Meanwhile, Yuka continues speaking to the children with a warm smile. He explains that their lives continue here, day after day, so it isn't just about the present moment. For the sake of their future, he insists, assistance is necessary. She turns her attention back to Clay, her expression earnest. Flora clarifies her own philosophy. To her, saving people means giving them hope. It is more than just defeating monsters or providing food and medicine. It is about giving them a reason to feel that being alive is a good thing. The next morning, a sharp knocking echoes through a small building. Inside, Kaido is startled from his sleep as Alzum, the man with the scarred eye, pounds on his door. He opens the door to find Alzum looking irritated. The man complains about the early hour before getting to the point. Kaido has a visitor. Someone arrived late last night and has business with him. Kaido is taken aback, wondering who would come to see him. Alzum elaborates that he only caught a quick glimpse of the person. He describes her as a blonde woman who resembled a priestess from the church, deepening Kaido's confusion. Elsewhere in the village, a man with a bandana shouts in disbelief. He shows his bare arm to his friends, exclaiming that an old wound he carried is now gone without a trace. A pair of hands, glowing with gentle light, pull away from the perfectly healed skin. An elderly villager, overwhelmed with gratitude, asks Flora if she is truly certain she requires no payment for her help. She gently dismisses his concern, telling him not to worry, as she acted out of her own desire to help. With a warm smile, she adds that it is merely a small token of her appreciation for them allowing her to stay in their home, despite her sudden and unexpected visit. Watching from a distance, Clay observes her interaction with the villagers. A cynical thought crosses his mind as he notes how much she resembles a compassionate shrine maid. His observation is cut short as a look of genuine surprise appears on his face. He breathes her name aloud, Flora. He sees her now completely encircled by the grateful townspeople. Men, women, and children all gather around, their faces alight with joy and admiration. As he takes in the scene, a small smile touches his lips. He thinks to himself that in this way, she hasn't changed at all. He finally walks toward her, calling out her name and chiding her for making him wait. Flora turns, an exclamation of surprise on her face, as he demands to know why she has come here. She tells him he needs to rest, explaining that he's been rushing about since he disappeared. She came to check on him out of concern that he was exhausted. He immediately asks if his work is being handled. She waves off his worries, stating that for the sake of the church's authority, it doesn't matter who does the preaching. Therefore, her absence isn't a problem. Clay looks flustered, realizing she came all this way just for him and is now telling him to be quiet. Leaning in close, her expression suddenly fierce, Flora declares that she is not a shrine maiden and he is not to treat her as such. She commands him to be silent and listen to what she, as a person, has to say. Stunned into submission, Clay can only agree. He gestures towards the woods, asking what she wants to do and if she'd like to go to her place. With a confident smile, Flora agrees, promising to show him exactly what her borderland development truly entails. She leads him to a clearing where a well-constructed house stands against the ancient trees. He stops, staring at the unexpected structure, momentarily at a loss for words. As they walk closer, Flora explains that she had the house built because living without one would be inconvenient. She then pauses, sensing the air around them. While she had felt the bleakness of the borderlands from the village, she now realizes the magical energy here is far more potent than she ever imagined. She remarks that only a truly powerful individual could even set foot in these lands. Looking at the house, she adds with a note of approval that Clay has clearly adjusted the ambient magical energy in the immediate vicinity. He admits that while building it was a nuisance, his purpose was to create a place where Kiza, Rita, and the other village children could come. Flora listens intently, her expression softening. She then reminds him of something he once said, that the reason for developing the borderlands was to create a place where they could all live peacefully. He seems surprised by her recollection, but quietly agrees. Her expression turns serious as she continues, pointing out the well-made road they traveled on to get there. It was a detail, she notes, that neither she, Yuka, nor Teritas would have ever considered. He seems puzzled, asking what her point is. Unfazed, Flora presses on, revealing another piece of information. She heard from the villagers that he had investigated the skill seed of every single person in the village. Leaning in close, her gaze intense, she connects the dots for him. The road, the skill seed investigation, the judgments he's made. None of it, she declares, is necessary for the simple task of developing the borderlands. Her words strike him with the force of a physical blow, leaving him wide-eyed and utterly speechless as the truth of her accusation sinks in. He remained silent as Flora smiled, observing that he had grown quite attached to the people of the village. His gaze fell downwards as he quietly admitted that he was indeed attached. Looking up with a soft expression, he conceded that perhaps she was right. He gestured toward the house, explaining that he was only able to build it because of his disciple. From a distance, Flora's voice rose in alarm, questioning who this disciple was and what would become of them if something were to happen to him. The next day, inside the newly constructed home, Clay, Flora, Yuka, and Rita gathered around a table. Flora cheerfully explained her connection to Clay, and Rita realized she must have known him from her time in the capital. With a bright smile, Flora confirmed this and formally introduced herself to everyone. As Rita blushed, Flora suddenly grabbed her, insisting she listen. She launched into a loud complaint, declaring that Clay was awful for having gone to the capital for a whole month without sending her a single letter. Clay overheard her outburst, remarking that they were getting close rather quickly. Rita, however, defended him, telling Flora that she didn't think Clay was such a cold-hearted person. In truth, Clay had struggled immensely with the task. He had sat surrounded by crumpled drafts, unable to put his thoughts into words for Flora. He believed she was too busy to be bothered by his letters, and had thought that if he simply wrote and discarded them enough times, he would be forgiven for his silence. Returning to the present, Flora's question cut through his thoughts. She pointed out that he had, in fact, sent a letter to Yuka. The revelation struck Clay, leaving him visibly shocked and speechless. He stammers, asking how she knew. Flora leans in, explaining that Yuka, having received his letter, became worried and informed her. She points out that if he's concerned about busyness, Yuka is far more occupied than she is. She tries to downplay it, claiming it was just a formal report related to Yuka's political affairs. As Rita listens silently, Flora remarks on how close the two of them truly are. Clay agrees, adding that they've been traveling together for about 4 years. The conversation draws the attention of the others in the room. Alzum, sitting across from them, interjects with a question. Just the two of you? His question hangs in the air, causing both Flora and Rita to look over with expressions of surprise. Alzum maintains his serious gaze, while Clay appears confused by the sudden inquiry, and Kiza looks on with curiosity. A gentle smile forms on Flora's face as she clarifies. She explains that while it's a shame, they did indeed have another companion traveling with them. Kiza is taken aback, picturing Clay's companions as a group of blonde nobles and beautiful women, finding his life peculiar. Meanwhile, Yuka chimes in, telling Clay that Flora is the one who has changed. He reveals that she used to call him Big Brother, a fact that surprises Clay. In response, Flora playfully pinches Yuka's cheek, telling him to hush. He rubs his cheek, adding that he even took her on as his disciple. Flora turns to him, a knowing look on her face, as if anticipating where his story is headed. The conversation shifts as Alzum explains his motives. He reveals that his investigation into the skill shield was primarily to understand the nature of Kiza's training. Seizing the opportunity, Flora offers her assistance, stating she can teach him if it involves magic. She then asks what kind of skill shield he was interested in. Her offer makes Clay visibly uncomfortable. He hesitates, a troubled expression crossing his face as he considers the implications. Flora clutches her head in disbelief, sweating and wide-eyed as she processes the implications of what she's just heard. Meanwhile, Alzum, Kaido, and Rita are informed of their new classifications. Alzum is now a guardian warrior, Kaido a magic swordsman, and Rita a high-class magic tool master. Flora bursts out, declaring that it's all wrong. She argues that a rare skill shield appears in only 1 out of 100,000 people, so it's impossible for 3 to exist in a single village. Alzum looks on with a skeptical expression. Clay explains that while there's a difference, all the villagers possess a skill shield that draws from the capital's power. Flora questions what he means. Clay, looking troubled, admits that it's just his hypothesis, but he believes the skill shields might be powered by magic. He continues, theorizing that the quality of a skill shield improves based on the density of magic in the place where one is born. He suggests that the dense magic of the surrounding forest, which gives rise to powerful beasts, could explain the villagers' unique abilities. Alzum concludes that this means the same phenomenon could occur in humans. Flora realizes that if his theory is correct, Emil Village is a dangerous place, a breeding ground for exceptional skill shields. The others are stunned by the revelation. Alzum, looking grim, remarks that it's a serious matter and that he's a bit scared. His fear turns to accusation as he grabs Clay, demanding to know why he didn't say anything sooner about their amazing skill shields. He reminds Clay that he told him this when they parted ways. He forcefully explains that if the fact that people in Emil Village possess superior skill shields becomes widely known, he has no idea what would happen. He warns that people might be forcibly relocated, and there's even a possibility that the royal family or nobles would come to crush the village. He smiles faintly, admitting that the problem is that the skill shields are too good. He's glad they finally understand, confessing that he'd been worried everyone thought he was just being pessimistic. His expression becomes serious again. He realizes something else, wondering if he should have taught them how to make magic tools after all. He then addressed Rita directly, his voice serious. She sat on the edge of a bed, her gaze fixed forward as she absorbed his words. He explained that her skill shield was simply too exceptional to ignore. Alzum interjected, noting with a hint of worry that she had already mastered the Guardian Warrior's fighting style. Clay acknowledged this, stating his intention for her to train as a magic swordsman, just as Alzum had been teaching Kiza. It was crucial, he insisted, that she understand the true extent of her own abilities. Her face flushed as she looked away, unable to form a complete sentence. She simply stammered, The truth was, she had never considered such things. She had no grand dreams, no desire to become something more. Her only wish was to continue living a quiet, peaceful life in her village. A new voice cut through her thoughts. A woman with a knowing smile addressed her, suggesting it would be a great discourtesy to both Clay and Kiza to receive instruction from someone so skilled without having any ambition herself. She pointed out that Rita had no intention of becoming a magic tool master. Rita looked up, taken aback. The woman continued, her smile unwavering, proposing a simple solution. If Rita had no specific dream, then she should simply try to become the person she wished she could be. The possibility, she implied, was well within her grasp. Inside a well-lit room, Kaido, Rita, Alzum, Kiza, and the confident woman gather around a table, deep in discussion about their future paths. As the conversation continued, Rita's thoughts turned inward. She felt unaccustomed to this new direction, but steeled her resolve, deciding she had to at least try. Sensing her hesitation, the confident woman offered some gentle counsel. She explained that what Kaido was suggesting was merely one of many possibilities for Rita's future. If she later decided against becoming a magic tool craftsman, the experience would not be a waste. Kaido chimed in, adding that he had used his appraisal ability and confirmed her aptitude was so strong that she shouldn't limit herself to being just an appraiser. The confident woman agreed, stating that the goal was simply to broaden her future options. Rita listened intently, her expression thoughtful, her doubts assuaged by their encouragement. A new resolve settled over Rita. She looked up, her voice clear and firm, and declared that she wanted to try making magic tools. With her decision made, the confident woman smiled, stating that the matter was settled. Kaido then turned his attention to Kiza and Alzum, asking for their decision. Kiza reacted with shock, questioning if he was also being included. He then elaborated on his reasoning, explaining to Alzum that the path of a magic swordsman was more versatile than he might realize. Kaido assured him that with his aptitude for both shield arts and magic, he possessed the necessary talent and could learn the basics of magic tool creation quickly. His words gave Alzum pause. He stroked his chin, recalling that Kaido had mentioned this before. Still, the idea of learning to use magic at his age didn't quite feel real to him. Kaido countered the man's skepticism with a firm reassurance. He insisted that as long as one was aware of their own talent, it could be nurtured at any time. It was not too late. The confident woman then suggested that Alzum and Kiza could learn together. With everyone on board, Kaido stood, his voice ringing with purpose. He announced that they should begin immediately, revealing that he had already constructed a workshop in the basement where they could start their training. He placed a small, smooth wooden board on the workshop table, setting a finely crafted pen beside it with a soft click. As Rita looked at the board with curiosity, he explained that it was made from trant wood and asked if she knew what a trant was. Before she could respond, Kiza eagerly declared that he knew it was a tree-type monster. Kaido confirmed this was correct, adding that the material was something he had possessed for some time, as trants are not found in the immediate vicinity. The wood from a Borderlands trant, it was explained, possessed immense magical power, making it too difficult for a novice to handle. However, this same potency meant that certain parts of the wood were perfectly suited for crafting combat-oriented magic tools. Alzum noted that there seemed to be a matter of compatibility with materials. Kaido affirmed this, emphasizing that for magic tool creation, one must carefully examine the type and properties of the components. He then posed a question to the others, asking if it didn't think they needed to study. He compared it to swordsmanship, where learning forms and techniques is, in itself, a kind of study. With the principle established, he presented their task for the day, to create an ignition magic tool. He explained that the device, used for starting fires, would be useful both at home and on journeys. He placed the finished tool on the table, instructing everyone to copy the magic circle onto their own boards as precisely as possible. He then held up the pen, explaining that drawing a magic circle requires one's own magic power, not ink. A steady, constant flow of energy is needed. Not too strong, not too weak, a skill that demands considerable finesse in magic manipulation. However, he revealed that the pen he had specially made for them would automatically draw upon a user's magic and release a fixed amount. For today, he told them, they should not worry about power control and concentrate only on drawing the circle accurately. As the lesson begins, the confident woman remarks that Kaido's self-regulating pen is a great invention. Alzum, examining his own pen, agrees, noting that it effortlessly handles the magic manipulation that causes students at magic schools to give up after half a year trying. Shortly after, Rita announces that she has finished. Kaido looks over her work on the wooden board and is impressed. He observes that the magic circle is nearly flawless and should be more than sufficient to activate. A hopeful Rita asks if he is certain. In response, he suggests they test it. With a soft click, he places a small magic stone onto the designated spot beside the circle. The stone immediately activates the inscription, and a small, controlled flame flickers to life at the center of the board. Rita gasps, her eyes wide with astonishment and her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She stares at the flame, whispering in awe that it lit up. Kaido smiles, confirming that she drew the magic formation correctly. He remarks that while this level of magic usually requires much more training, her success on the very first attempt is a clear sign of her talent. Her eyes sparkle, reflecting the magical light as a wave of pride and accomplishment washes over her. He watches her quiet, heartfelt reaction for a moment. After letting her savor the success, he explains that he will handle the finishing touches, which involves cutting the piece from the board. Once separated, the flame will extinguish. Rita, holding a notepad, shyly asks if she can keep it as a memento, and he happily agrees. Inspired, Rita suggests they should make tools for everyone in the village, viewing it as good practice. Kaido enthusiastically agrees with her initiative. Nearby, Alzum praises Rita's skill while Kiza grumbles in frustration, finding that the lines he draws keep getting distorted. The confident woman then approaches Kaido, holding her own successfully lit magic tool. She declares that she will use this opportunity to become a magic tool craftsman, explaining that she'll need another source of income if she quits her current job. Kaido is taken aback, realizing she might genuinely be planning to leave the church. Several days later, he walked with the confident woman, who observed that while Rita and Kiza's magical control had improved, they were still far from proficient. Still, she acknowledged, almost everyone was now capable of drawing the magic circles. She turned to him, a slight smile on her face, and added that it was something to see him teaching them while also crafting the tools. He glanced away, a subtle gesture. Their path led them down a long, magically illuminated staircase, the light from the lamps casting a soft glow on the stone. As they continued their walk through the illuminated grounds, the confident woman remarked on the extravagance of using monster-repelling magic for mere streetlights. He agreed, stating his desire to eliminate even the slightest threat of monsters for the village's safety. She acknowledged the value of the streetlights, but pointed out that the truly vital project was land development. He confirmed they were expanding their territory bit by bit, prompting her to ask what the real obstacle was. Her gaze sharpened as she offered a guess, suggesting she knew the reason he couldn't proceed with the development. His attention fell to his own arm, where a faint light emanated from a band on his wrist. He looked up, questioning if she was referring to the cursed armlet. He nodded in understanding, explaining that while the curse was significant, he could remove the armlet without issue. His expression then shifted as he asked if she was the elf from the Borderlands he had heard about. Her composure broke for a moment as she demanded to know how he knew that. He held up his arm, the ornate band glowing softly. He explained that it was called the armlet of the spirits, and that the elf, Charlotte, had told him was because a great number of spirits were gathering around him. He continued, relaying that due to this dangerous accumulation, Charlotte had instructed him to use the armlet to disperse the spirits. He confessed, however, that since he couldn't see the spirits himself, he had no way of knowing the full truth of the matter. He knew only one thing for certain. The armlet he wore was imbued with a single, specific effect. All around him, the air seemed to shimmer with the countless, unseen spirits he had described. The confident woman processed his words. A spirit from the borderlands, a spirit that wanted to be separated from him. She realized she needed to confirm the truth for herself and recalled her conversation with the elf, Charlotte, deciding she must speak with her again. Kaido, meanwhile, was lost in his own thoughts. He had hoped never to see Charlotte again, but the cursed armlet left him no choice. He had to seek her out, and he could not afford to wait any longer. Standing resolute under the moonlight, he made his decision. He would go to her himself. He announced that tomorrow he would set out to find the elven settlement. His sudden declaration caught the confident woman's attention. An adventure, she exclaimed with a determined grin. Sound good? I'm coming with you. Kaido was completely taken aback by her immediate enthusiasm. He questioned her, asking if she had some complaint. She clarified that she hadn't come all this way just to rest. She wanted to go with him. Then, with a slight blush, she corrected herself, admitting that wasn't quite right. She had come because she wanted to have fun with Clay. Looking at him earnestly, she asked, "So, I can't." He was left speechless, staring at her as she looked back with genuine anticipation. After a moment's hesitation, he relented. "All right," he agreed. "Let's go together." She cheered, declaring that's how it should be, and they set off into the woods. Their journey took them deep into the borderlands, finally arriving at Vetaphons, the settlement of the elves, a village built high among the massive trunks and sprawling branches of ancient trees. Within one of the treetop structures, an elven man with long, dark hair gazed out a window. He spoke to someone behind him. "Charlotte," he said, "it is time for your punishment." The man, identified as Melville, the elder of Vetaphons, turned to face her, his expression heavy with sorrow. "I'm sorry," he murmured. Charlotte stood before him and replied calmly, "I understand, uncle." She stands before Elder Melville, who tells her that if she wishes to atone, she must do so now. He reminds her that this is her honorable duty. She quietly agrees. Following their exchange, she turns and departs along a massive tree branch that serves as a walkway. As she leaves, Melville calls out her name, Charlotte, and wishes her a good morning, his expression somber. Other elves on the path also offer her greetings. As she proceeds, a young male elf asks if she is on duty today. The dark-haired elf woman beside him quietly urges her to be careful. Charlotte turns to them with a gentle, reassuring smile and thanks them for their concern. Her destination lies further along the colossal boughs of the World Tree, the divine entity worshipped by the elves, its immense form housing their entire settlement. She gazes up at its canopy, reflecting on its nature. The World Tree grows by absorbing the elves' magic, and in return, its fruits and other parts provide indispensable materials for the settlement. But the situation has changed. Suddenly, a massive, red-scaled dragon with a third eye on its forehead bursts through the foliage. This creature, a black dragon, appeared about a month ago and began to devour the World Tree itself. The ensuing battle has been devastating. Many warriors were lost and homes destroyed. Now, their only recourse is to lure the black dragon by offering it the World Tree's magic, a desperate gamble to finally defeat it. As the dragon lunges forward with a roar, small buds of pure magic begin to sprout from a nearby branch, the bait now laid. From a distance, Elder Melville watches the confrontation begin, his face a mask of grim resolve. He shouts for Charlotte to stop, but it is too late. She unleashes a blinding torrent of energy, roaring at the foolish dragon to perish. The beast, however, is impossibly fast. It sidesteps the blast with contemptuous ease, a cruel grin spreading across its face as it looms over the now terrified elf. Her attack useless, Charlotte collapses to her knees in despair, wondering what this all means. Just then, Kaido arrives, calling out her name in alarm. She is lost in her terror, tears streaming down her face as she pleads for anyone at all, to save her. Far away, the narrative shifts to the imposing royal capital. Within its walls, in a grand office, Duke Conrad sits at his desk, poring over official documents. He clicks his tongue in annoyance, reading a report. He expresses his irritation that the commoners appointed by the second prince are achieving results so quickly. His complaints continue to a shadowed figure. He notes that the hero Yuka's origins are being questioned, and that the church is sending priests to the borderlands, giving the people a chance to appeal judgments. The matter has become a significant topic of discussion. His frustration boiling over, he slams his fist on the desk. He scoffs at the idea of the hero who defeated the Demon King being made a fool of, declaring that for now, they will simply have to wait and see. His rage gives way to a sinister smile. He muses that it's fine to let the commoners have their moment. After all, many of the influential nobles are already on the first prince's side. Once the mock battle is over, everything will be settled. He mused that the mock battle would be a grand affair, a large-scale event to gather the populace. To him, it promised to be quite an amusing festival. Turning his attention to his unseen associate, he inquired about the state of their preparations. With a knowing smirk, he then asked if his conspirator had managed to acquire what they sought in the underground. In the darkness, a hooded figure smiled, and the powerful, chained torso of a captive was revealed. The hooded figure affirmed their success. As they spoke, the disparate threads of the plot began to draw together. Prince Yuka reviewing his plans, Charlotte still reeling from her encounter, and Kaido, standing ready and confident. The conspirator declared that all was proceeding as planned, their individual paths converging towards a single outcome. In a sun-dappled clearing, Kaido and Flora's path is blocked by a monstrous, pig-headed beast wielding a colossal axe. The creature looms over them, ready to strike. Kaido's eyes widen in alarm as he shouts Flora's name. In response, she throws her hands forward, instantly conjuring a holy barrier. The monster's axe crashes down, shattering against the golden light of the shield, which cracks under the immense force but holds just long enough. With the creature's attack thwarted, Kaido seizes the opening. He leaps high into the air, sword flashing, and brings his blade down hard across the monster's back, carving a deep gash. Sometime after the battle, they continue their journey. Flora observes that since entering the borderlands, they've encountered nothing but monsters, with no sign of the elves they seek. Kaido, patting a large slab of meat he has stored away, remarks that he thinks it's about time they found them. She muses that their monster hunting has been quite successful, adding that the meat from the great orc was delicious and she wouldn't mind if more appeared. Kaido, however, looks concerned, pointing out that if this continues, they'll have more meat than they can eat. He worries that a year's supply of just one type of meat would be a problem. Flora suggests they could offer it to the people of Elmo Village. This gives Kaido pause. He wonders if they would want the meat of other monsters, and questions whether it would even be palatable. His thoughts drift to something Tarita has once told him, that there are lands where people even eat goblins. The very idea makes Flora recoil in horror, her face paling as she shouts, demanding to know if it's a lie. He continues, explaining that they can't be eaten as is due to their strong odor. However, by soaking them in various spices and liquids, the smell can be eliminated. Flora is aghast, insisting that the smell is hardly the main issue. Kaido recalls Tarita's mentioning that the prepared goblin meat serves as a good accompaniment to alcohol, and admits he'd like to try it if he knew the recipe. Flora, exasperated, points out that Tarita's was eating it alone, a fact that gives Kaido a sudden, sharp shock of realization. Their conversation abruptly ends as a powerful presence descends upon the forest. Flora calls out his name, her voice laced with concern. Kaido looks up through the canopy, his expression turning grim as he identifies the source of the immense aura. It is a dragon. He and Flora hold their ground as a massive, three-eyed dragon descends upon them, its maw agape. As the beast's shadow falls over them, Flora raises a hand, preparing a defensive measure. The creature lands with a thunderous impact. Unfazed, Flora asks for his thoughts. He calmly notes that it's quite rare to encounter a black dragon. His gaze remains fixed on the beast, a curious thought crossing his mind. He wonders aloud if it might be tasty. Flora replies that she has no idea, as she's never eaten a black dragon before. The dragon suddenly launches itself back into the sky. He questions if it's fleeing or preparing for an aerial attack. Flora declares that taking flight is a foolish move, proclaiming that her barrier is unbreakable and that she will teach the creature a lesson. Her magic forms a vast, shimmering dome around them. The dragon collides with the invisible wall, recoiling with a loud thud and a look of pure shock. Flora remarks that it's proving to be unexpectedly troublesome. Stunned but not defeated, the dragon hovers and unleashes a torrent of black fire. As Flora identifies the dragon's breath, Kaido focuses his senses, his left eye glowing as he begins to appraise the attack. His analysis reveals the true nature of the blast. It is a dark attribute magical attack, far more potent than a typical breath weapon. He realizes the dragon is actively refining its magic to amplify the power. A predatory grin spreads across his face as dark energy swirls around his mouth. So this is what it's like, he muses, invoking his own ability, mimicry. He then opens his mouth and unleashes an identical torrent of black flame, a perfect copy of the black dragon's breath. The beast can only stare, its eyes wide with disbelief at the impossible sight. The two streams of dark power collide in a cataclysmic explosion. The force hurls the dragon backward, its jaw scorched and smoking as a cry of pain escapes its throat. The wounded dragon glared at Kaido, sensing a powerful miasma from him. It hissed that he must have killed a great many people to possess such an aura. And as it spoke, a strange pattern swirled within Kaido's eye. Beside him, Clay stepped forward, sword in hand. With a chilling smile, he told the beast it was unlucky to have attacked them, promising to devour it completely so it could rest in peace. Provoked by the threat, the three-eyed dragon let out a furious roar and lunged, its massive jaws snapping wide. Clay stood his ground, sword raised to meet the charge, as Kaido watched from behind. The creature's lunge faltered, and with a ground-shaking crash, its colossal body collapsed. Dust and smoke rose from the impact, leaving Kaido standing alone before the defeated beast. Sometime later, Flora approached Kaido with a warm smile. She praised him for his efforts, her voice gentle as she said, "Good work." He looked up at her, reflecting on the battle. He admitted that while she was dealing with the Black Dragon's attack, she had also erected a complex, large-scale barrier, a feat, he confessed, that even his mimicry skill could not replicate. Flora's smile widened with pride. She remarked that such power was to be expected of the Saintess, adding that she herself was captivated by the technique every time she used it. As they sat by a crackling fire, roasting the dragon's meat, she pointed eagerly at a skewer. She asked him which part he thought was the most delicious. Kaido, slightly bemused, simply noted that it was easy to get along with her over such matters. The small campfire cast a warm glow on the two of them, a stark contrast to the immense, shadowy form of the slain dragon lying just beyond their camp. She took a large bite, her expression immediately lighting up with pure joy. She declared it was incredibly delicious, the best dragon meat she had ever tasted. Her delight was so profound that Kaido had to ask if it was truly that good. She listens as Kaido explains that while the dragon meat has restorative properties, it's hardly a proper meal. He suggests they find the elves he mentioned, proposing that a walk through the forest would be a good change of pace after being cooped up. Flora agrees, ready for the journey. Their walk leads them to the base of a colossal tree, so immense that an entire settlement is built within its trunk and branches. This is the elven village of Vetafons. Within the village, Charlotte stands among her kin, a sense of unease settling over her. She finds it strange, noting that the black dragon has not returned as it should have. An elven elder, Melville, asks for her thoughts. Charlotte confirms her worry about the dragon's absence, wondering aloud where it could have gone. Just then, a young elf named Zaire rushes towards them, calling for the elder and Charlotte. Melville demands to know what has happened. Breathlessly, Zaire reports that 2 humans have arrived at the settlement. The elder scoffs at the news, dismissing it as foolishness. He questions how humans could possibly breach the phantom barrier protecting their village. Zaire clarifies that one of them was wearing the bracelet of spirit subjugation, an item he recognizes as one Charlotte herself had bestowed upon someone. The mention of the bracelet triggers a sudden, shocked realization in Charlotte. A single name flashes through her mind, Claire's. Understanding dawns on Melville as well. He tells Charlotte to go meet them, assuring her he will watch over the world tree in her absence. She thanks him, and Zaire quickly offers to guide her to the entrance. Guided by the young elf, Charlotte makes her way toward the village entrance, where Kaido and Flora stand waiting. As she approaches, Kaido spots her and raises a hand in a cheerful greeting, calling out her name. Beside him, Flora watches the reunion with a look of quiet surprise. As he watched, Flora stepped forward with a warm smile, introducing herself to the elf as Flora, a priestess of the Creation Church and a friend of Clay. Charlotte's gaze shifted from Flora back to Kaido, inquiring if this was indeed his companion. Her attention then turned to a more practical matter. She asked how the two of them had managed to enter the village, explaining that a phantom barrier was supposed to be in place to prevent any intruders from passing through. He casually replied that while he'd noticed an elven settlement, he hadn't been paying much attention and had simply analyzed the barrier's structure to break through it. Flora stared at him, utterly astonished by his nonchalant confession. He then changed the subject, mentioning that they had been about to camp in the nearby forest for the night, as it was getting late. Seizing the opportunity, Flora brightly asked if the settlement had an inn. Charlotte, however, seemed lost for words. She finally managed to stammer that they could not, in fact, stay there. Flora, taken aback, asked if there wasn't even a treehouse available. Kaido looked over at Charlotte, wondering why she was being so formal with him. Her expression turning serious, she gestured towards a massive, distant tree visible through the woods. She explained that a great black dragon had settled upon its summit, and because they never knew when it might attack, the entire area was in a constant state of danger. This, she clarified, was why they couldn't allow humans to stay. Kaido peered towards the distant tree, questioning the presence of a black dragon, as he couldn't see anything there at the moment. Zaire, standing nearby, provided the answer. He explained that while the dragon had flown off somewhere a short while ago, it always returned. She added with a grim expression that every single day, the beast continues to devour the world tree. It has no intention of leaving, she concluded, until the tree has completely withered. Her dire words left both Kaido and Flora stunned into silence, the former only able to utter a questioning sound. He stood there, processing the grave news, when Flora leaned in with a sly smile. A realization seemed to dawn on her as she asked if he was perhaps thinking what she thought he was thinking. He stammered, trying to find the right words to explain his intentions to Flora. His hesitation was interrupted by Charlotte, who looked at him expectantly and asked what became of the black dragon. Kaido trailed off, struggling to explain that he and his companions had defeated it. He announced the fact with a confident smile, leaving Charlotte, Zaire, and Flora utterly stunned. Disbelieving, Charlotte repeated the question, asking if he had truly managed to defeat the beast. The confirmation only deepened Charlotte's shock. She recoiled, her face a mask of horror as she asked if he had eaten it. Flora, however, beamed with excitement, confirming that he had. The proof of his victory, it seemed, was now digesting in his stomach. The colossal body of the defeated dragon lies motionless, its immense form dwarfing the crowd of elves gathering around it. A heavy silence hangs in the air, broken only by the final, shuddering breaths of the vanquished beast. From the edge of the forest, the elven leaders watch in disbelief. Elder Melville confirms their fears and hopes, stating that it is, without a doubt, the black dragon. He then wonders aloud how a mere 2 people could have possibly accomplished such a feat. His companions, including Charlotte and Zaire, are rendered speechless, their eyes wide with a mixture of shock and awe as they stare at the fallen monster. Turning to Kaido, Charlotte's voice trembles as she seeks confirmation, asking if it's really true that the black dragon has been defeated. Kaido, startled by her intense emotion, stammers in reply as Flora looks on in surprise. Tears of pure relief stream down her face. She explains that the end they had all been dreading is finally over, and that they no longer have to live in despair. The weight of their long-held fear begins to lift. The other young elves, including Zaire, share her stunned expression, their minds struggling to fully comprehend the reality of their sudden salvation. That initial shock gives way to a powerful wave of emotion. Tears well up in their eyes as the collective burden they have carried for so long is finally released. A thunderous cheer erupts from the entire elven population. Their voices rise as one in a joyous roar, celebrating their newfound freedom from the dragon's tyranny. Amidst the celebration, Kaido turns to Flora, slightly bewildered. He comments that it seems they've done something amazing, but questions if it was really more than just defeating the Black Dragon. She explains that a Black Dragon is no ordinary monster. Its power is comparable to the Demon King's top generals, making it a creature that cannot normally be defeated. Hearing this, Kaido begins to grasp the true magnitude of their accomplishment. They were met by the Elven Elder, who introduced himself as Melville, the leader of the Vetafon's tribe. With a gracious gesture, he formally invited them to rest at his home. He led them to a grand dwelling, intricately woven into the very structure of the forest and glowing with soft, ethereal lights. Once inside, he and Charlotte bowed deeply in unison. Melville spoke for all his people, offering their heartfelt gratitude for saving not only their settlement, but the world tree itself from the brink of annihilation. Kaido seemed taken aback by the formality, stammering that there was no need for such thanks. He had simply wanted to defeat the dragon, he explained. Melville's expression remained solemn. He insisted that while it may seem small to Kaido, for the elves, the fact of their salvation was monumental. They felt compelled to offer a reward. He asked if there was anything they desired that the elves could provide. The offer made Kaido pause, his mind turning over the possibilities as he quietly considered what he might want. His contemplation ended. With a determined look, he made a single request. He asked for permission to develop the borderlands. The request caught the elves by surprise. Develop, Melville repeated, clearly perplexed. Seeing their reaction, Kaido quickly backtracked, assuring them that he wouldn't press the issue if it was impossible. After a moment of thought, Melville conceded that it was a sound idea. He observed, however, that for a warrior of Kaido's immense strength, there was no urgent need to protect the area. The word protect left Kaido confused. He then revealed a core tenet of his people. The Vetafon's elves, he explained, have an ancient legend. They believe they were given a sacred mission by the gods, to protect the human realm from the dangers lurking within the borderlands. This duty, this land, was a special trust given only to their tribe. Flora turns to Kaido, questioning the elder's explanation. She points out that humans are already being pushed into the borderlands, and if they are told that elves are protecting them, ordinary people will simply avoid venturing deeper. She finds the whole situation peculiar. Kaido, looking troubled, can only offer a stammered apology. The elder clarifies his actions, explaining that the magic he placed on the spirit's armlet was intended to steer Kaido away from the borderlands' dangers. He concedes that Kaido's request goes beyond their mandate, but acknowledges that by defeating the Black Dragon, he has earned the right to develop the land. Melville grants him permission to proceed as he wishes. Kaido is taken aback, realizing this is their expression of gratitude. He resolves to accept it as a testament to their trust in him. He expresses his thanks aloud. Flora adds that now he can move forward with his plans without any reservations. She silently mulls over the situation, finding the notion of the Sacred Tree Kingdom's elves protecting humanity to be a strange tale. All she had ever heard were stories of them looking down on humans. Her curiosity piqued. She asks Melville about the difference between the World Tree and the Sacred Tree they worship. He explains that they are essentially the same. The Sacred Tree is a sapling that grew from a branch of the Great World Tree. A thought strikes her. If that's the case, she wonders, can its leaves and fruit be harvested? And would they be more valuable? The elder confirms her suspicion is correct and offers to give her some. Flora's eyes widen in excitement, and she eagerly accepts with a shout, startling Kaido. With a knowing smile, Melville produces a small, intricately designed vial. He announces that he will also give them this, an elven secret medicine. He presents the vial to Kaido, explaining that the medicine is a crystal of life from the World Tree, created as part of their sacred mission. He offers it as a tribute, a gift for saving their future. He hesitated, questioning if he could truly accept such a precious item. Melville reassured him, explaining that as long as they offer prayers to the World Tree, the secret medicine can be made again. The elder encouraged him to take it without concern, adding that he would also help with the development of the borderlands. Standing beside Charlotte, Melville made a formal promise. He declared that the Vetafon's elves would cooperate with Lord Claire's development efforts, and that Kaido should call upon them whenever he required assistance. Kaido stared back, his eyes wide with disbelief and gratitude, a single bead of sweat tracing a path down his temple. His hands gently closed around the crystal offered by Melville, and he managed a quiet word of thanks. With the agreement sealed, a joyous celebration erupted. Zaire let out a boisterous cheer, raising his mug high amidst a crowd of celebrating elves. The feast continued with great energy, the long tables laden with food and drink. Kaido sat amongst the elves, sharing a drink and pleasant conversation. He watched the festivities, a warm, contented smile gracing his features, genuinely happy to be among them. Several days later, in a tavern in Emil village, a man recounted a harrowing tale to his companion. He described being surrounded by 5 goblins, certain that his end had come. He continued his story with dramatic flair, explaining that a sudden bolt of lightning had erupted from behind him, striking down all the goblins in a single, blinding flash. The storyteller concluded, his voice filled with awe. When he dared to turn and see his savior, he found an elf standing there, Charlotte, with Kaido just behind her. As she and Kaido walked through the village, he remarked on the positive changes. The elves were now coming into the Borderlands forest, and he'd heard from Alzum that they were helping protect the villagers. It seemed everyone was getting along well. She turned to him with a bright smile, stating that with the elf issue resolved, they could finally restart the development of the area. She then asked what she could do to help. Kaido, taken aback, questioned if she wasn't planning on returning home. She explained that she liked it here. Since Kaido was creating a place where she could feel at ease, it was only natural for her to stay. She mused that she never expected to interact with villagers and elves, having specifically chosen a remote borderland to be alone. Leaning against his shoulder with a contented expression, she confessed her fondness for the people of Emil village and the elves. Unlike in the capital, she added, no one here looked down on her. Her tranquil mood shifted abruptly. She threw a fist in the air, suddenly remembering that Yuka's mock battle was happening soon. Whether she returned to the church or not, she realized she had to go back to the capital for a time. Kaido simply agreed. His expression grew serious as he processed her words. He understood this was an event orchestrated by Duke Conrad to demonstrate Yuka's strength to the populace, and he knew that many were anticipating Yuka's utter defeat. She noticed his pensive state and asked if he was all right, assuring him he didn't have to force himself to go. Kaido paused, touching his chin in thought. He had to admit he didn't want to see Yuka fight. He turned to her, a determined smile on his face. He announced that he would go to the capital as well. A man had to witness his friend's moment of valor. Charlotte beamed, delighted, exclaiming that he absolutely had to come. The news of their impending departure reached Rita, who looked up in surprise. You're going to the capital? She asked. He explained their plans to her. A friend of his was participating in a festival-like event in the capital, and since it was a rare chance, he had decided to go and cheer him on. Rita seemed to understand. As Kaido and Charlotte discussed their plans, Rita listened with a wistful expression. She confessed her own desire to go to the capital, mentioning she had visited once as a small child but could no longer recall the experience. Hearing this, Charlotte's eyes lit up. She immediately turned to Glanz, the wagon driver, and excitedly asked if Rita could join them. Glanz readily agreed, saying he wouldn't mind at all if Rita wanted to come, leaving her momentarily stunned. Still hesitant, she turned to Kaido, voicing her concern about the high cost of travel to the capital. Glanz, however, smiled warmly and assured her he would cover that expense himself. He then offered a practical solution. Since they had time before their departure, she could craft some magic tools to sell in the capital. He reasoned that the profits would likely be enough to cover her travel expenses. Rita, surprised by the offer, asked if he was being serious. Charlotte chimed in, telling him not to worry about such high costs, as she would pay for the lodging. She explained that she and Kaido had already planned on getting separate rooms. He confirmed this, adding that he would arrange for the horses. She then embraced Rita, explaining that since they were already booking 2 rooms, Rita could simply stay with her at no extra cost. Overjoyed at the thought of traveling with a female friend, Charlotte's enthusiasm was infectious. A flustered but grateful Rita accepted the generous offer. After the excitement settled, Charlotte noticed a pensive look on her new companion's face and asked what was wrong. Rita admitted her concern that if Kiza found out she was going to the capital, he would surely become envious. Charlotte conceded that it was a strong possibility. Overhearing them, Kaido mused aloud that perhaps they should invite Kiza to come along with them as well. At that very moment, at Alzum's house nearby, Kiza burst out into the street, shouting with fierce determination, I'm going too. He was immediately intercepted by Kaido, who struggled to hold the frantic young man back. Kiza thrashed in his grip, yelling for them to take him with them and not to leave him behind. He was taken aback to see Kiza's father, Alzum, standing nearby. Kiza, clinging tightly to Kaido's leg, declared him the coolest big brother and thanked him profusely. Kaido, flustered, could only think about the high cost of travel to the capital. Alzum calmly asked his son if he was sure about going, and Kiza confirmed he was, receiving his father's permission. His father then mused aloud that he, too, had wanted to go to the capital. He explained his reasoning to Clay, stating that while the elves were cooperating, he couldn't leave the village undefended. The number of monsters in the nearby forest had been increasing lately, a troubling development he attributed to the rampaging black dragon. Protecting the village was his priority. He concluded that he wouldn't be able to leave for some time. Kaido listened and acknowledged the man's duty, his serious demeanor softening. Alzum smiled and told Clay to enjoy the trip on his behalf, adding that he looked forward to whatever souvenirs they brought back. But his expression turned grave once more as he posed a question to Clay. He asked if it was truly all right not to invite Charlotte, the elf girl, expressing concern that she might be ostracized by her people if she wasn't seen with them. The man urged him to ask her directly, warning that he would regret it later if he didn't. As Clay processed the advice, the full travel party, Kaido, Kiza, Rita, and Charlotte, was briefly seen together. The conversation concluded, and the focus shifted to the elven settlement, a village of graceful structures built into and around colossal, ancient trees. There, Charlotte gave her answer with a gentle smile. Of course, she was going. Her immediate acceptance caught Clay completely off guard. He was stunned, realizing that he had been so worried she would refuse. It was then he understood that Alzam's warning had been correct. He looks on in surprise as Charlotte asks if she may also accompany them. Clay turns to the elf elder, Melville, who stands nearby with Zaire. Melville explains that he doesn't mind, as he has some business in the capital himself. With a weary but grateful expression, Melville elaborates that he was concerned about traveling to the capital alone and would be happy for everyone to go together. Zaire enthusiastically agrees. Clay, seeing the situation unfold, internally reflects on how their group has suddenly grown to 6 people. Realizing this will be no ordinary journey. 1 week later, preparations are complete. From a rooftop, a voice notes that an incredible group has been assembled for the trip to the capital. The full party stands ready to depart. Clay, the true hero, leads the way, flanked by Rita, the saint, and Charlotte, the elf. Behind them are Kiza, a high-rank magic tool user, Zaire, the magic swordsman, and Melville, the elf elder. With a confident grin, Clay announces their destination. To the capital, the group arrives in Frata, the bustling capital of the Altonia Kingdom. The streets are crowded, and the architecture is grand. Rita looks around in wide-eyed wonder, remarking that the capital is so much more vast and lively than their own territory. As they search for lodging, Clayers cranes his neck to look at the towering buildings, marveling that they seem to reach the sky. He sighs, noting that this is the second place they've tried, but all the inns are completely full. Charlotte explains the reason for their difficulty, stating that with the capital in the midst of a mock war fever, finding a room now is likely impossible. Clayers considers asking a church to let them stay, but then trails off. He changes his mind, stating that he has another place in mind as they continue through the city streets. His destination comes into view: the grand and imposing Hotel Octavia. Inside, a distinguished hotel manager greets them with a polite bow. He addresses someone named Ars, confirming that 3 rooms have been prepared for their party, all of them suites. Rita immediately protests, telling the manager to wait and insisting that suites are far too much for them. She questions how it's even possible for rooms to be available for someone like Ars and wonders just how many rooms were kept empty for them. The manager calmly turns to Clayers, explaining that he was instructed by His Highness Yuka to provide them with the finest hospitality upon their arrival. He adds that, of course, the lodging fees are also taken care of. Clayers is stunned into silence as he is led down a lavishly decorated hallway. He realizes that Yuka must have worked with this hotel before and has completely outmaneuvered him. The manager politely offers to guide him to his room. Inside one of the opulent suites, Charlotte sits on a large bed, remarking that it's a shame they couldn't get a room like this for Clayers too. She explains that she only has one because she's the party leader. Kiza, sprawled on another bed, exclaims that it's his first time on such a soft bed and worries he'll get too used to it. He addressed his companions in their lavish suite, suggesting they rest for the day. The real business, he explained, would begin tomorrow, after which they could take a stroll through the capital. As the others settled in, Charlotte approached him quietly. She whispered that she needed to step out for a bit that night, as Territas had requested a meeting. The news caught him by surprise. Later, under the glow of street lamps, he walked alone through the quiet, cobblestoned alleys of the capital city. He soon arrived at his destination, a tavern with a sign depicting a crescent moon, labeled Waning Moon. Confirming this was the place, he knocked firmly on the wooden door. To his astonishment, the heavy, reinforced door slid open on its own with a series of mechanical clicks. Stepping inside, as the door shut behind him, he realized it must be a special magical tool designed to identify customers automatically, perfect for a secret meeting with an important figure. A man behind a polished bar welcomed him, remarking that it was rare to see a new face. Clay looked around the quiet establishment, momentarily surprised. He explained that an acquaintance had called him there, but it seemed no one else had arrived yet. The bartender confirmed that he was the first customer and that the establishment was reserved for the night. The bartender then asked for his order, recommending either a whiskey from the northern country of Zarth or a wine from Altener. Clay requested the whiskey. Just then, a new voice apologized for being late. Territas had arrived, expressing his gratitude that Clay had come. Clay turned, surprised to see him. Upon seeing him, Clay's face brightened with relief, and he called out the sage's name. He greeted Clay in return, observing that it had been several months. Territas asked how Clay was doing, adding that he himself was well, having avoided any reckless journeys, though he admitted that teaching at the academy was proving to be a nuisance. Leaning forward with a smirk, Clay asked if Territas was taking good care of their old master. Territas conceded that, at the very least, his own skill in magic was a direct result of their master's teaching. Clay chuckled, dismissing the comment as an overstatement and reminding him that there were plenty of people in the world with skills far surpassing his own. His light-hearted demeanor vanished. Territas leaned in close, his voice sharp, demanding to know if Clay had taught anyone else the skills necessary to defeat the Demon King. The sudden intensity of the question caught Clay completely off guard. He quickly reassured the startled hero, explaining that the bartender was already aware of their entire history. Territas then revealed a surprising connection. The bartender was a former disciple of their master. As the man poured a drink, he confirmed Territas' words, expressing his own surprise at finally meeting the legendary hero. The bartender continued, clarifying that in this world, the hero Yuka was merely a porter, tasked with the burden of carrying the means to defeat the Demon King. He then gestured expansively, offering to cover all their drinks for the day as his personal treat. When Clay questioned the generous offer, the bartender simply smiled, stating it was the only way he could express his gratitude. Toritas grumbled that the bartender was being cheap, pointing out that he was a member of the hero's party himself. Ignoring the banter, Clay held his glass and refocused the conversation, asking Toritas for the real reason he had been summoned. The sage explained that Flora had told him about an upcoming mock battle. He stated plainly that if Yuka was involved, he would need to borrow Clay's strength, though he clarified he wasn't concerned about the outcome of the battle itself. He explained that the problem wasn't the mock battle itself, but what would come after, presenting two rolled-up scrolls. Clay took one of the documents, asking what it was. Toritas revealed that he had secretly acquired copies of two different articles Duke Conrad had prepared for the capital's newspaper. As he read, Clay deduced the Duke's plan to publish one of the articles based on the battle's outcome. Toritas confirmed this, stating that Conrad specifically wants Yuka to lose, which made Clay wonder if Yuka was also anticipating a victory. Toritas elaborated on the article's contents. If Yuka were to lose, the article would cast doubt on his true abilities, even questioning if he was the one who truly defeated the Demon King. The article for Yuka's victory was irrelevant, he claimed, as Yuka losing was impossible. The real threat was the first article. The revelation struck Clay. He understood the article's true purpose: to tarnish Yuka's reputation by questioning his immense power and exposing what could be perceived as a battle-hungry nature. Toritas continued, outlining that Yuka's greatest asset was the public's adoration, a direct result of his victory over the Demon King. The mock battle was designed to showcase that very strength, further winning over the people and consolidating his influence. He then posed a question to Clay. What would happen to public opinion when faced with such undeniable power? The thought made Clay recall his own past, how he was feared for being like the Demon King, and he wondered if Yuka would suffer the same fate. Toritas, however, dismissed the notion, asserting that it couldn't happen. To prove his point, he reminded Clay of their journey together, pointing out that the people Yuka saved never feared him. A memory surfaced of Yuka and Flora standing victorious over a slain beast, receiving the gratitude of a crowd of villagers. Understanding dawned on Clay. He acknowledged Yuka's inherent kindness and asked what role they were to play in all of this. Just as Toritas began to respond, the bartender cut in, shushing them. Behind him, a woman with long, light hair appeared, apologizing for her late arrival. She explains that she managed to slip away from the church after returning to the capital. Clay, turning to Toritas, asks about the prelude they were discussing, and Toritas confirms he was just about to begin. Flora elaborates, revealing that with so many citizens gathered, the royal family is hosting a martial arts tournament as a prelude to Prince Yuka's mock battle. He smiles, remarking that a martial arts tournament sounds like fun. Toritas turns to him with a knowing smile, clarifying that the tournament is, in fact, the main topic of their discussion. Clay looks back, surprised by the sudden shift. He then makes his request clear. He wants Clay to participate in the tournament and win it all. The two sit in silence for a moment, the weight of the proposition settling between them. His mind finally catches up, and his expression contorts into one of pure disbelief. He shouts in protest, questioning why he would need to win a tournament that is meant to be for Prince Yuka. Toritas calmly explains his logic. If Clay proves himself to be stronger than the prince in the tournament, it will highlight just how much power Yuka is suppressing during the mock battle that follows. He adds that this outcome would be a blow to him personally. He assures Clay that there is no need to enter the tournament under his own name. Instead, he can use a fake name and fight as a masked warrior, preventing him from being feared as a mere fictional character. He considers the proposition. If it is to forge a path for Yuka to remove the obstacles holding him back, then he is willing to do it. If it means becoming the strength that protects Yuka's future, he will accept. Having made his decision, he turns to Toritas and agrees. Toritas, pleased, tells him to come by the next day, promising to have a mask prepared. Yuka, overjoyed, lets out a cheer. Flora immediately takes charge of the next step, suggesting they buy him a generic, inconspicuous weapon, so his fighting style isn't immediately recognizable. She explains that his current weapons have all been uniquely strengthened to match his level, which would be a dead giveaway. She offers to guide him to a suitable shop tomorrow. Yuka then adds his own part to the plan, stating he also has work to do on the tournament's management side and wants to come along. He offers to handle Clay's registration himself and asks what alias he'll be using. Clay, slightly flustered, agrees, admitting he has no better ideas. With the details settled, the group sits together at a table. Flora cheerfully proposes they drink wine to celebrate, and Toritas enthusiastically agrees. The following day, the city streets are bustling with activity. Flora recalls a memory. Clay's first weapon was a lace sword she had purchased. At the time, he had no money, so Yuka had paid for it. As they walk through the crowded streets, Rita remarks on how lively it is. Flora agrees, noting that it's rare for the capital to be this packed. She surmises that everyone must have come to see the heroes with their own eyes. Kiza, walking beside them, shares his excitement, exclaiming that this is on a completely different scale from the sparring matches in their village. Clay explains that hundreds of participants are expected for the preliminaries alone, with warriors and mages gathering from across the globe. He glances around, ready to point out examples. He points out specific groups in the crowd, a clan of warriors from the western remote islands, distinguished by their fur-lined attire, and then the independent magician corps of the Curio Republic, clad in dark, hooded robes. Clay remarks on a sheer number of unusual people gathered. Rita, her eyes wide with curiosity, silently considers that glands would likely be familiar with such diverse groups, as that kind of knowledge would be essential for a merchant. As she looks on with wide, startled eyes, Clay speaks reassuringly, telling her there's no need to be anxious. Rita confesses that she doesn't quite remember things clearly. She continues, admitting that the whole situation still doesn't feel real to her. Yuka agrees, and Flora chimes in, confirming she feels the same way. Clay then explains to the group that in order for them to truly grasp the reality of the situation, they need to witness the strength inherent in the magic tools that Rita creates. His words lead them to a stop in front of a particular building. Rita looks up at the shop sign, questioning if this is the place he meant. A wave of apprehension washes over her as she swallows hard, the realization dawning on her. This is a magic tool shop in the royal capital. Inside, Flora explains that among all the places she knows, this one is the best for getting a proper appraisal. Clay adds that this is the surest way to understand the true extent of Rita's skill. Before them, a silhouetted figure in a pointed hat stands ready to judge her work. The first public display of the talent Clay helped nurture. The door to a dimly lit shop creaks open, and Rita cautiously steps inside, calling out, "Excuse me?" She calls out again, more loudly, but is met with silence from the cluttered interior. Realizing she can hear someone, she insists, "Wait a minute," and ventures further into the shop. From behind a curtain, a weary voice mutters to itself. It seems the shop's owner had no intention of letting anyone in while the town was in such an uproar. The curtain is drawn back, revealing an older woman in a large witch's hat. She wonders aloud how to dispel some magic, then notices her visitors. Her eyes land on Flora, and she remarks on the rare sight. Flora smiles and greets her warmly. "It's been a while, Kusuno." Placing a supportive arm around Rita, Flora explains their purpose. She introduces Rita from Emil Village and asks Kusuno to appraise a magic tool the young woman has made. If it's deemed sellable, she hopes Kusuno will purchase it, formally requesting the appraisal. Kusuno's expression hardens as she stares intently at Rita, who pleads silently with wide, hopeful eyes. The word appraisal seems to have struck a nerve. Her tone softens slightly. She tells Rita not to be so tense, clarifying that while she can't provide a professional appraisal, she is willing to look at the item and offer advice on any areas that need improvement. She then gestures for the item, telling Rita to show it to her. Startled but obedient, Rita agrees. Just as Rita reaches into her bag, Kusuno suddenly shouts, "Wait!" The command freezes Rita in place, her eyes wide with shock. Kusuno's gaze is fixed not on Rita, but on the bag she is holding. "That pouch of yours," she says, her voice filled with sudden intensity. "Is that a storage pouch?" She looks on in wide-eyed shock as the shopkeeper, Kusuno, explains the gravity of the situation. Kusuno questions why she would carry such an item openly, noting that it appears to be an unprocessed magic tool of considerable rarity. She declares it a high-grade item, a treasure that even 100 gold coins could not purchase. The shopkeeper then turns her sharp gaze to Flora, demanding to know why she hadn't educated the girl on the pouch's value, accusing her of being a bad influence. Before Flora can respond, Clay steps forward and apologizes, admitting that he had warned them not to take the item outside. Unfazed by the accusation, Flora calmly gestures with her thumb towards Clay. She tells Kusuno that if she wants details, she should ask him, revealing that he is the one who created the pouch. As Kusuno and Rita stare in surprise, the shopkeeper immediately inquires about its capacity. The shopkeeper sizes Clay up, remarking that he doesn't look like much. She notes his youthful appearance and seemingly plain magical power. Clay just laughs awkwardly, admitting that he hears that assessment often. He explains that creating magic tools is merely a hobby for him, and that he is an acquaintance of Flora's. As he speaks, Kusuno's expression shifts slightly. She thinks to herself that if he is a disciple of that person, then his incredible skill would make sense. Her train of thought is broken as she decides on a new course of action. She tells Rita to stop and present all of her magic tools for a full appraisal. The young woman agrees with a cheerful yes. The young woman places her creations on the counter, an ornate glass jar and a delicate hourglass. Kusuno picks them up one by one, her gloved hands examining the craftsmanship closely. Rita watches her, swallowing nervously. She sets the hourglass down with a soft click. Having finished her inspection, Rita lets out a shaky breath, her anxiety palpable. Her breath catches as she timidly asks if her creations were no good. Kusuno looks at her with a serious expression and states that it's quite the opposite. The problem, she explains, is that the quality is far too good. Rita's eyes widen in disbelief. The shopkeeper elaborates, calling the items truly wonderful and praising their craftsmanship. She declares that if they were put up for sale, they could easily fetch double the standard price. Rita can only gasp in utter shock. She listened, wide-eyed, as the shopkeeper explained the lantern's intricacies. It was no ordinary tool. It lacked the typical special enchantments, but was instead a testament to meticulous craftsmanship. The shopkeeper pointed out the careful work, noting how a reflector, not usually used for the light source, was installed. Furthermore, the exterior was beautifully enhanced by magic, and a small magic stone was used to amplify its brightness. The shopkeeper declared it a fine magic tool. She observed that while most mages see such items merely as a means to activate magic, Rita's creations were different. They were crafted with a deep consideration for the user, a quality she found particularly impressive. Her words brought a flush to Rita's cheeks. Overwhelmed, she clutched her hands to her chest, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. The shopkeeper then turned her attention to Clay, asking if he was the one who had taught Rita. He confirmed that he had only shown her the fundamentals. With a gentle smile, he explained that all the clever innovations were born from Rita's own practical insights and talent. He then spoke to Rita directly, but she humbly replied that she was only thinking of what he might find useful. Clay insisted that discovering and cultivating such a talent is rare, suggesting she possessed a gift similar to that of his own master. He then asked for her thoughts on the matter. His words conjured an image of the man who had trained him, the sage Teritas. Clay clarified that he had merely passed on the teachings he himself had received. The shopkeeper listened to this exchange with a thoughtful expression, then posed a simple question. So, what now? In response, Clay formally asked if she would be willing to purchase Rita's magic tools. The shopkeeper seemed taken aback, stating that her establishment didn't typically buy such items. Overhearing the request, Rita gasped in gratitude. Despite her initial hesitation, a sly smile spread across the shopkeeper's face. She agreed, stating that all that remained was to negotiate the price. As it was their first time doing business, she promised to forego any severe haggling. With that, she slammed 2 large sacks overflowing with coins onto the counter, declaring it the price for the entire lot. The sheer amount of money left Rita utterly speechless. She stares, wide-eyed and trembling, at the sack overflowing with gold coins. The shopkeeper, Kusino, casually remarks that selling magic tools is a simple way to make this kind of money, suggesting it's an amount that can be easily recouped. Kusino continues, adding with a confident smile that for a first-rate magic tool craftsman, this sum is nothing extraordinary. Rita remains completely speechless, unable to process the situation. The shopkeeper then firmly grasps Rita's arm, expressing a strong desire to conduct business with magic tool craftsman Rita again in the future. Overwhelmed and flustered, she manages to stammer out a single word of agreement. From the doorway, Clay watches the exchange. Sometime later, Teritas leads the group, now including Flora, to a large wooden building. He announces that this is their next stop, a blacksmith shop that Flora should find familiar. He throws the door open without ceremony, shouting for someone named Gert. He declares they're coming in precisely because he's in the middle of working, much to the surprise of his companions. Inside, a young blacksmith, hammer in hand, lifts his protective goggles. He recognizes Teritas in the doorway and mutters to himself about the unexpected arrival of such a group. Teritas greets the blacksmith cheerfully, slinging an arm around Clay's shoulders. He explains that they've come to buy armor for Clay, and for the other young person with him as well. Clay then steps forward and formally introduces himself. As he speaks, an almost tangible aura of power emanates from him, leaving the blacksmith utterly stunned and intimidated. The blacksmith, still reeling, asks why someone with such obvious power would even need armor. Teritas compliments his sharp perception, before Clay clarifies that he is, in fact, participating in a martial arts tournament the following day. He explains to the blacksmith, Gert, that he plans to enter the tournament under the alias Gray. Gert processes this information, asking if this means he requires new equipment. Clay clarifies that the story is complicated, but his main goal is to hide his face and avoid standing out, suggesting something like a mask would be ideal. Gert looks at him incredulously, dismissing the idea as a joke. The blacksmith's reaction leaves Clay baffled, wondering why simply wearing a mask wouldn't be sufficient. Gert vehemently explains that trying to hide one's identity is pointless. He argues that if a nameless warrior suddenly appears at the tournament, it will only make them stand out more. A mask, he insists, would draw far more unwanted attention than simply showing his face. Nearby, Rita and Teritas react with shock. Rita exclaims that she hadn't heard anything about Clay participating in the tournament. He sheepishly admits that he hadn't mentioned it. He explains to Teritas that it was a sudden decision made the day before, but he intends to give it his all. Filled with enthusiasm, Teritas clenches his fist and declares that both he and Rita will be there to support it. As Teritas questions the use of a fake name, Rita speculates that if Clay fought seriously, he'd lose immediately, which would be embarrassing. She then reconsiders, admitting she can't imagine him losing, but concludes that the Capital's tournament is a difficult challenge even for him, remarking on how vast the world is. After considering the request, Gert informs Clay that a special order mask by the next day is impossible. Instead, he offers a solution. Clay can choose from a selection of masks he has on hand, and he will deliver it later that day. Clay gratefully accepts. The blacksmith then opens a wooden crate, revealing a collection of strange and intimidating masks: a horned demon, a unicorn skull, a simple skull, and a long-beaked bird mask. Flora points out the unicorn and crow masks to Clay. He finds them all rather creepy and unsettling, questioning why he doesn't seem to have any say in the selection. Flora, however, looks on with interest, remarking that one of them is actually quite good. With a soft click, Clay fitted the chosen mask over his face, concealing his identity. He turned to the group and asked for their opinion. Rita immediately chimed in, saying it suited him well, and Flora agreed that it looked good. He, however, was less concerned with aesthetics, stating that it didn't matter as long as it wouldn't fall off during a fight. In response, Teritas offered to integrate it with a mask for him, a term that left Clay puzzled. The blacksmith, Gert, overheard and explained that the mask had a cursed enchantment he was familiar with. While popular for preventing weapons from being dropped, it acted like a powerful adhesive, making it impossible to remove. Clay quickly requested an enchantment that wouldn't permanently stick to him. He then asked about weapons, but Gert noted that the cheaper options might not be reliable. The blacksmith pointed out a magic sword, but it was a one-handed weapon. Gert apologized, realizing Clay had only ever wanted to wield a two-handed sword. Clay then made an unusual proposal. In exchange for a weapon, he wanted Gert to watch him fight in the tournament. He clarified that money was no issue. He wanted the blacksmith to witness his true abilities and then craft a weapon perfectly suited to him. The offer hung in the air as Gert considered it with a smirk, while Teritas watched with a hopeful, determined look. Gert broke the silence, agreeing to the deal. He found the little lord interesting and promised to forge a weapon worthy of him. Teritas, relieved, thanked him profusely. The blacksmith turned to leave, saying he would hurry with the mask adjustments and that they should look forward to the tournament. Clay formally thanked him for his help. His words left Clay in thought. He was suddenly struck by the realization of what was at stake, wondering just how far Flora's former party could truly go with their current equipment. He looked away with a slight, sheepish smile, admitting that the blacksmith must have noticed. Gert simply smirked, his confidence clear. Turning back to his workshop, surrounded by neatly arranged tools, the blacksmith promised he would put in the effort. The next day dawned over the city's rooftops. On the day of the martial arts tournament, Clay stood before a grand coliseum, its towering arches reaching for the sky. He was now dressed in a new, dark long coat and trousers. His new disguise was complete with an ornate mask, covering the upper half of his face with a design resembling horns and feathers. With his hand resting on the hilt of his new weapon, he steeled himself, ready to proceed.